What's up, party people, and welcome to Countdown to Classic. This is a podcast that educates, informs, and gossips about the highly anticipated World of Warcraft Classic. Each week we discuss the news, hot button issues, and content of the upcoming Classic servers. I'm your host, Josh Corbett, and this is a show where it's not my opinion on World of Warcraft that counts, but yours. If you're new to the show, Countdown to Classic goes through your expert input on everything relating to the upcoming release of World of Warcraft Classic. Today, I've lined up yet another massive show jam-packed full of WoW Classic goodness, as we touch on Warsong Gulch and Arathi Basin chat from the beta. The listeners chime in on Sodapoppin's comments about stream sniping. There's a part 2 of the discussion from last week about the actions of Trollgodx at the dueling tournament. There's an interview with a sitting member of the great state of Maine's House of Representatives about that one time that WoW got caught up in politics. And also, I'm so happy to debut the first installment of our next ongoing segment with a former vanilla dev on the show, as we speak at length with John Staats all about the making of Blackrock Depths in what will be weekly breakdowns of the instances of vanilla World of Warcraft. So you all know the drill by now. This is a community-based podcast. So if you like what you're hearing, join the Discord now and keep the conversations going with us all over there. Follow me on Twitter at Count2Classic with the number 2. Email me at feedback@countdowntoclassic.com. And please do be sure to tell a friend about the show. And don't forget that you can also PM me a voicemail for the show via Discord. Everything you'll need is in the show notes for each episode, along with the show's Patreon link. If you'd really like to help keep the show going, or if subscriptions aren't your thing, then you can help keep the lights on at Countdown by checking out the show's tip jar over at Ko-Fi. There's also the show's merch store with some great designs over there for t-shirts, hoodies, coffee mugs, etc. So please do be sure to check that link out too. Now, with all of that out of the way, let's get into it with Calling Countdown. All right, it's time for another Countdown to Classic call, and we are going back to the PvP. We are going to talk about some Warsong Gulch and how it's all been shaken down in the beta. Wanted to cover this last week, but here we are this week talking about it, and we've got four callers, I should say, on the line. And as always, Countdown to Classic regular, I am just absolutely getting everything I can out of you. Ayle, how are you, man?
Very good. There's plenty of juice left.
I love it. I love it. And a huge welcome back to someone that we also absolutely love on the show. Always a pleasure to hear from them. Nano, what's good, my man?
Glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me back.
Happy to have you back. A lot of you remember Nano from our talk about Nostarius and his time with the Nostarius crew. And we've got two more people on the line who are members of a guild that we've spoken to before on the show, the immensely hardcore, amazing guild Onslaught. And we've got Fried. How are you, man?
I'm doing good.
And Khano, thanks for joining.
Hey, thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Thanks for agreeing to do this, guys. Now, look, Ayle, as the veteran, will get you to kick off here. And what I want to talk about is obviously, I can't remember the exact date, but everyone knows now that, 2 or 3 weeks ago, whatever it was, about 10 days after the beta started, Warsong Gulch was opened up. Now, I have feverishly been trying to get in there, but I was like, I'm not playing Warsong Gulch until I'm max level. And, with the bloody full-time job and all the stuff I got going on, I'm still struggling to get to level cap, but I haven't been in Warsong Gulch, but guess what? It doesn't matter because you guys have. And Ayle, I want you to start with Warsong Gulch. How have you enjoyed it in the beta? How has it looked? How has it felt?
I think it's felt pretty good. There are a bunch of issues, which is why they opened it up for testing. A lot of kind of differences from how it was in Classic, but besides that, it's really that same song and dance in Warsong. First to 3, capture the flag. it's honestly been a lot of fun with the pre-made versus pre-made battles and just getting in there as well.
How much of it have you played, and what kind of things did you achieve in there?
So we've actually played it a shit ton. Both myself and Fried and Khano were in the top 10 for honor gains the first week of. And so to do that, that's actually pretty impressive, I think, because it means that well, not impressive. It just means we played a ton. That you'd have to beat all the other people playing Warsong as well to rank that high.
Okay, out of interest, before I forget, and we'll get to it sort of in a bit more detail later on, but just to flag it early now, what are some of the issues that you've seen creep up already?
One is how kind of flag caps return. I think Khano can probably go over this one a bit better. I know there's some specific issues with mages where you can ice block and not immediately pick up the flag. And I think with other classes, it's kind of similar. There's a little bit of a delay between dropping the flag and somebody actually being able to. So we've used that a bit to our advantage and to our disadvantage. There's also a bug where if hunters feign with the flag, you don't actually see them with the flag. So they can kind of run across the field and on the map, you can see the flag moving if you're next to them, but you don't actually see it, on the.
Okay. Sorry, you dropped out for half a second there. Did you say there's a little bit of a delay between someone dropping the flag and someone else picking it up? Is that right?
Yeah. So I think Khano can go into it a bit better, but
no worries.
I think you should be able to ice block and then pick up the flag almost immediately after. And currently that doesn't exist. I think that was changed sometime later, maybe, I don't know, Wrath or even after that, where you couldn't block and then pick up the flag right away.
All right, well, Khano, we'll turn to you now and just sort of say, now I should ask, sorry, real quick before Khano gets into it, because Ayle, you mentioned to me that you had been playing Warsong Gulch, and sorry, Ayle, to make you blush, but you mentioned privately to me, dude, I am playing WSG with this godly mage who is the best flag carrier ever. Is that Khano?
No.
No, actually, it's not.
It is.
All right, Khano. Now that you're blushing, Khano, let's turn to you. And now that everyone knows that you're a mage and you can hold your own in Warsong Gulch, tell us, have you been enjoying it? And what are some of the things or issues that you've seen pop up that maybe Ayle just mentioned that you can extrapolate on?
Well, first, I feel like I should cover a little bit of my background before we get into it, maybe.
Go for it.
I was an original rank 14, so Warsong Gulch has always been the home to me. And then as expansions moved on and ranked battlegrounds came out, I was in the top 3 teams for ranked battlegrounds in our battle group, reaching over 3K rating. So I have quite a bit of experience with Warsong.
Okay.
The biggest things that I've noticed right now are, like you said, flag not showing up right when you drop them. I'm used to them instantly being there. I don't know if that has to do with the spell batching or not.
Okay.
Another thing I've noticed because of the spell batching issue is if you pick up the enemy flag right as they're returning, you'll have the flag for half a second. I even have a clip of this. You'll have the flag for half a second and they'll still get the cap, and then your flag that you have on your back will disappear. So I don't know if that's a spell batching problem or. Along with, they added, I don't remember what patch they added a debuff count for dropping the flag and then picking it up again. That is on this client.
Okay.
For the beta, and that should not be.
Okay. And anything else that you've seen or had issues with, or just any epic moments just straight off the bat that you've been engaged in these couple of weeks in WSG in the beta?
Well, just fighting against other known big players is actually really we had a fight against Swifty.
How'd you go?
That's really fun. We ended up winning. Swifty is a little rusty in the vanilla gameplay. But yeah, there's still a lot of wall jumping and stuff that's in the game, and they originally said it won't be in the game. So you can get behind bases and stuff with the flag, and no one can really get to you unless they know how to do those. Okay,
and are you happy with that, to see that wall jumping still there?
Some aspects of it are really nice because I feel it provides an extra level of. So if you're running the flag and you want to do a wall jump to get on top of your tunnel while there's a whole bunch of people chasing you, it adds that one extra layer of skill to it. But a lot of people frown upon it. Okay. I can see that getting behind the bases might be a little.
Okay. Well, Fried, I'll turn to you and ask you firstly what class you're running around with in the beta, and also any other issues that the guys haven't mentioned that you've come across, or just your experiences in general. Have you been having fun in Warsong Gulch in the beta?
Sure, yeah. So first of all, I've been playing a warrior in the beta. I've been playing a warrior for a year or so now, and have kind of played quite a few classes, stemming all the way from retail vanilla through various private servers. And my experiences in Warsong, specifically as a warrior, for me, the most frustrating kind of thing I've run into playing Warsong has been the view distance.
The view distance.
The view distance, yes. And the ability to slash target players is very low in Warsong. So seeing where the flag is coming out or being able to target a flag carrier, it's very difficult because you can't see.
So another thing that they have that shouldn't be in is the flag actually will show up on the battleground.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes it's accurate and sometimes it's actually bugged out.
Okay. All right. Nano, I'll turn to you for a second because the three guys that we've just gone through, I'm pretty sure they've all been playing Horde, and I think you mentioned to me that you're playing Alliance. Is that right?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. Now, as I said, even though I haven't been getting involved in Warsong Gulch, I've been, happily watching away on many a stream of many a person broadcasting what's been going on. And it was absolutely enthralling those first couple of days to watch. I think the Alliance got the upper hand very early, but then from then on, there was a lot of steamrolling coming from the Horde. Now, I'd ask you in general, obviously, have you been having a good time, but also, have you found that you've been winning battlegrounds or sort of getting rolled a bit more, or how's it been going in terms of who's winning in ratio wise?
So my experience has been mostly as a solo queuer into the pre-mades run by like Sodapoppin and Vinruki and Sidu and all those guys. So my experience has been I lose a lot in the battlegrounds because I don't have a group to run with.
Yep.
Yeah, so we've been losing a lot to the pre-made groups. So it's the typical Alliance solo queue experience, at least in my experience, where Alliance just tends to lose more often than the Horde, but maybe that's just confirmation bias or something. But I've experienced some of the same things that the other guys have talked about, like the draw distance is really noticeable being reduced. The draw distance is really frustrating, not being able to see across the field. And with that, like having now relying on the mini map to tell you where flags are, and that's not supposed to be there. And it's not accurate either. So it's really, it throws you for a loop. And then the terrain exploits have become really prevalent. So I think it was Fried or Khano who were saying that it adds a little extra level of knowledge to it. But that kind of goes away when everyone starts learning about it because they see Sodapoppin streaming it to 50,000 people. Yeah. So I have some issues with that.
Okay. Anything else that you picked up on that you were surprised to see, or in either exploits wise or just general gameplay wise, or has it just been kind of business as usual for you for the most part?
I really love Warsong Gulch. It's my favorite of any of the battlegrounds that they've ever done, and probably that's because in OG Vanilla I spent my time ranking solely in Warsong Gulch before Arathi Basin was even out, and so I get kind of sad when there's a ton of terrain exploiting and it becomes really prevalent. I'm okay with it. I was okay with it when it's these few people who know the exploits and you can play around that. But when everybody knows it, then it really shifts the way that the game is played, because you can get to some really crazy spots that make, attacking almost impossible.
And that's something that's kind of interesting because I think the quality of player in the beta is kind of a lot better. Having a lot of the former gladiators and just the people they've invited here. There's a lot of people who know how to do these jumps, where before, playing on a server, you'd maybe have a couple people who could do that, but it's really widespread and prevalent. And some of the best, maybe some of the best Warsong Gulch players, ever are on the server. So.
And Ayle, you mentioned, and once you sort of answer this question, please guys, go nuts. Don't wait for me to address you. We'll turn this into a free-for-all from here on. But Ayle, you mentioned something to me along the lines of a bit of a new meta that you've seen evolve that is unique to the beta. What was that you were talking about?
That was kind of more to do with the Arathi Basin thing that's happening right now.
Oh, okay.
Did you want me to touch on that as well?
Yeah, sure. While we're here, go for it.
Well, actually, unless I'm mistaken, Arathi Basin hasn't popped at 40 at all. Do you know if it has, Fried or Khano?
From what I understand, the first day a 30 to 39 AB popped, and since then it has not. And me and Khano are sitting in a 6-hour and 40-minute queue right now. So
I think Aspen was in one yesterday, and that was basically all I've seen.
Right. And so the weird thing about that is that I'm trying to figure out if there's a bug or there's something going on. So I've been going over to people I know in Alliance and talking to them about it. And apparently Alliance just aren't queuing up. They won't queue unless they have a group and they're kind of like fully geared. And I think that's kind of like a precedent maybe being set by, I don't want to, maybe streamers who, they won't queue up until they're fully geared, until, they have the best chance at playing. And that's kind of really detrimental to, the spirit of the beta and testing and things like that. So, I know, myself and Khano and Fried, we've all been waiting in queues pretty much since they announced that, AB was going to be up. And we haven't been able to play any games.
I definitely see what you're saying. So you're thinking that there's a bit of, and this is something that we haven't really touched on the show. And not that it's a huge issue or anything, but he's saying that obviously with a lot of big name streamers or streamers in general or people in the media being involved in the beta, if they are broadcasting to the world, are you saying that's maybe not in their best interest to get involved in the battleground until they think they can kick a bit of ass?
I don't want to speak for them, but there's something could be going that way. I don't know why there hasn't been any pop. If there's, 3K people on this beta, how come there's only been 1 or 2 battlegrounds pop? Is there a bug? Are people not queuing up? And like I said, from the people I'm talking to, they're like, no, we're not queuing. We're going to farm BIS first.
I've seen quite a bit of that. Even on Horde side, it's people kind of saying, well, I still need to get my BIS or I still need this necklace before I queue. And it's kind of strange to me that people are going so hard for BIS before they queue, but yeah.
I'd throw myself under the bus a little bit there because as I said earlier in the call, I've stupidly been well, I don't want to step in a battleground until I'm just max level for that battleground. I want to be going, if I'm level, if I'm going up against all these level 30s before they raise the level cap, then I want to be level 30 and at least be somewhat on an even keel there. So I again, against the spirit of testing, I should have just jumped in and gone nuts. But I do appreciate what you're saying. Now, does anyone else have any other thoughts as to whether it's a bug or anything like that? Or do you think it's probably more player related?
I think it's largely player driven. So as the Alliance representative here, I'm not level 40 yet. And that's the vast majority of people who I see are still leveling. Even streamers are just hitting level 40 now. So, and I think, Josh, your experience of I don't really want to queue until I get up to the highest level it's how I feel too. I haven't tried to queue for Arathi Basin for the 30 to 39 bracket yet either. So I'm kind of with you in that. So I'll queue when I hit the level 40, and then Ayle and company can destroy me. But but I'm not there yet. So I'm waiting to get to level 40 before doing Arathi Basin. And that kind of is probably the fault of Blizzard in setting this up incorrectly. So Warsong Gulch was enabled after the vast majority of people, especially the biggest, most popular streamers, have been level 30 already and had been farming gear. So then they added that content to the game. But here they added Arathi Basin for queuing up at basically the same time or a day after they increased the cap to 40. And I think people underestimated how long it was going to take the vast majority of people to get to 40. And so Arathi Basin is technically open for testing, but most people aren't in the position yet where they're ready to go and do that. And I think that's probably the fault of Blizzard for setting the expectation incorrectly or just not pacing the beta testing content correctly. That now people are sitting in queue and waiting for other people to just level up and queue against them.
You can queue in though in the lower brackets though. Like I think there's brackets open from 10 to 19, 20 to 29, and 30 to 39 as well. But just nobody is queuing into them. Everybody is waiting to level up.
Now, guys, we've covered obviously some of the technicalities of bugs and whatnot that you've seen. Now, let's have a bit of fun. I'll open it to the floor and just sort of say, let's share war stories. Who's got some moments of glory? You know, you're all in there against some fucking big names. And you guys are the opposite of me. You know, I'm a scrub. You guys can handle yourselves in a battleground. Tell me some cool war stories. Who's had a great encounter?
I had a one-on-one against Vinruki, like before the Horde tournament last weekend, and around the Berserker camp on the Horde side of the field, and I very nearly won, and he crit my he crit his Fire Blast and it sent me over the edge, and he was outgearing me, so I almost beat Vinruki in a 1v1.
Oh, nice!
But I fell short.
Nice. No, I can assure you.
That's my best story is that I did not kill Vinruki.
I can assure you, if I nearly beat Vinruki, I'd be like dancing around my house. So I appreciate where you're coming from. Now, who else had one?
I was just going to say that it seems like most of the war songs we've entered, or just most of the things that the world PvP that's happened, has all been really, really pretty epic. There's just a lot of really good players, a lot of really good games. And so it's hard to single out one specific moment when there's just all these amazing players in the beta.
As mentioned earlier, I run flags usually for our team as a mage, so I don't get into too many fights, but I do get away from a lot of the guys. So having like Asmongold and Esfand is always fun.
Well, I should just press you a little bit on that one, because as I mentioned, Ayle was talking to me and talking up your ability as a flag carrier and whatnot. If you're able to share any kind of company secrets or, you know, tactics behind what you do, tell us how you approach that facet of the game.
I approach it more as my job isn't to kill anything. My job is just to get away from stuff. And as a mage, you have a lot of control for either sheeps or novas, because there was no trinkets at the beginning. So people can't remove sheeps unless they get dispelled by another person, which is only a priest, I believe, on Alliance, because paladins don't even have dispel yet at third. So having awareness on what your team is doing and what the enemy team is trying to do is the biggest advantage with kiting around, because all it comes down to is just kiting, because no one has mounts. So it's just run speed and blink.
Fair enough. Ayle, you were going to chime in?
Oh, yeah. It was going to be a war story, but that's okay.
No, go for it. Now's the time, man.
Yeah, I actually had a pretty good encounter with Esfand in the tunnel. I think he was actually on his way to kill Khano at that point. And he was running from me, so I chickened him. And that enraged him. So he turned around and we fought, and it was really close. It came down to the wire, and he ended up killing me with like a grenade, like proc combo. And as he was running away, someone clipped it and sent it to me. He's like, that guy's an ass. So I got that going for me. But like as for like Khano's like flag carrying skills, like I think honestly he's like, the thing that I've noticed that's impressed me is just how slippery he is. And I think that probably comes down to really good like cooldown management. And like I was gonna ask, like, do you have any sort of a rotation that you do, like depending on the class that's chasing you, like whether you use Frost Nova or like how you use Blink? Or
yeah, it's just knowing what you're fighting against. And I mean, that I can talk about that for an hour. Like if it's a warrior's coming for me, the first thing you want to do is counterspell so they can't charge you, because your counterspell range is longer than their charge. So they have to go to Berserker stance, and then they can only intercept. And by then you just blank.
Khano, I can assure you, you just threatened the wrong guy with an hour-long chat about the minutiae of getting away from people in a Warsong Gulch match, because I would
I'm
happily
totally down sometime.
Oh, I would love to have that chat, believe me. And you think like, oh, you know, you could talk about it for hours. Well, we've got the listeners who would love to hear about that kind of stuff. So
yeah, I'm totally down. You just let me know when.
Will do, man. Will do. All right. Well, we'll round out on this one, guys, and Does anyone have, now that we've covered off on sort of some of the fun that you've had on Warsong Gulch and some of the things you've seen and notes that you've taken and bugs that you may have reported, does anyone have any hopes and dreams for Arathi Basin? Obviously, that just opened up a couple of days ago. You guys have already mentioned some of the issues that have already been happening about people trying to get in there to test it. What do you want to see happen in Arathi Basin? Is there anything you particularly want to test? And even beyond that, opening up, do you think that obviously we're going to have maybe AV opened up to us as well? What do you predict?
The number one thing for Arathi Basin that I'd like to see change from the Warsong Gulch is the draw distance, which is a really, really big deal in Arathi Basin, being able to see the incoming groups that are going to the individual bases. And if the draw distance is the same degree that it was on the Warsong Gulch, that's really going to reduce the ability for you to call out the incomings ahead of time and, make those surprise attacks happen more often, which will probably just force people to be better at scouting. But yeah, that's something I'm concerned about and want to see some improvement on for Arathi Basin testing.
I'd say the two things that I'm most curious about going into testing AB would be does stealth capping work on flags, and then probably do these various little safe spots work, like, for example, the corner of the little hut on farm. So yeah, safe spots and stealth flag capping.
When you say stealth capping, do you mean like the vanish like bug exploit?
Yeah, or like cloaking device cap.
Yeah.
I totally agree with view distance, though. It becomes a different game when the view distance is so short. You can't even see the other side of like the base you're on.
Yeah, view distance is really frustrating.
Then it turns into like a shadow game versus like a pre-call out getting ready for that node to get attacked.
Ayle, you had something?
Yeah, it was basically the same thing. I was going to ask the other guys, like, I remember the view distance being better. Am I just mistaken, or is it way too low in the beta?
So, in my experience as a warrior, which is clouded by private servers, I don't know what it is in retail, but I can say that on Chronos, for example, I have a different view distance or tar distance than I would have on, say, like the Light Soap. So, where that specifically needs to be hammered out or set to, I don't know.
All right, guys. Well, look, I'll just get all your opinions real quick. Does everyone just think it's a foregone conclusion that level cap's going to go to 50 and we're going to get AV at some point as well?
Yes.
Yeah, I think
they will test AV.
Because I see the point as a beta as testing stuff. Why have a beta if you're not going to test everything that it has to offer?
Very well said. Very well said. And I'm in that camp as well. I'm sure that level cap's just going to keep going up and get further away from my grasp as all you guys have all the fun. But I'll try and throw myself in a battleground at some point, even if I am low level, and just see what I can find. All right, guys. Well, look, before I let you go, let's get some plugs in there. You're all amazing players, great personalities. Let's let people know where they can find you to watch some beta gameplay and obviously some classic gameplay as well when that game comes out eventually on August 26/27. Ayle, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitch TV /Ayle Gaming. It's AYLE. As well, if you're interested in tools or community content, swing by Classic WoW.
ClassicWow.live. Yes, absolutely. And Fried, where can people find you?
Yeah, I've started streaming with the Classic WoW beta, and you can find me at twitch.tv/FRI3D_. So it's fried with a 3_.
Very good. And Khano, you're streaming as well, mate. Where can people find you?
I'm on Twitch TV. Khano TV is my stream.
And that's Khano, Khano, is it?
Correct.
Fantastic. And Nano, you're dipping your toes into the streaming world as well. What's going on with you?
Yep. Hit affiliate a couple weeks ago, so pretty excited about that. All my 10 viewers were really excited. You can find me at twitch.tv/NanoNost or on Twitter. My tag is Nano_Warcraft.
And everyone, listen up. I will have all of those links in the show notes, so don't worry if you miss them. What you do is go into the application that you're currently listening to this podcast on and just look down and scroll down, and you'll find everyone's links there. If you're listening on the website, you'll see all the links right there on the page. So please go and support all of these fine gentlemen. They're all fantastic players, and they'd be great to watch on stream and have a chat with. So guys, look, let me thank you so much. We'll round this one out, and I'd love to get you guys back again as you've had some, more time in Arathi Basin. Hopefully those queues get sorted out and you guys can go nuts and have fun. But we'll stay in touch, and I'll keep in touch with Ayle and see if we can do a part 2 of this in a couple of weeks' time. But let me say my thank yous. Ayle, thanks so much again, man, for helping organize Fried and Khano for the call too.
Thanks for having me.
And Fry,
thanks so much.
No, my pleasure. Thanks so much for being here, mate. And Khano, big thanks to you too.
Yep, it was a pleasure.
And Nano, mate, you're always welcome back anytime. Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and I look forward to the next one.
This week on my other podcast, The Cinephiles, we cover 1993's Hard Target.
It comes to the next morning, and fucking Chance is standing in the middle of the crime scene.
Oh, that's the best, when he's a detective now, effectively.
What are your credentials? I sleep under a bridge, and I got this sweet fucking mullet. Oh, I also clearly wasn't born in this country.
When people are flashing their badges, he just grabs the mullet and flashes.
And how's the detective gone? Oh, what do you think it is, Chance?
If you'd like to hear more from the Cinephiles, then please do log on to cinephiles.com. That's SINNERFILES. Or search for the Cinephiles on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from. But now, let's get back to Countdown. All right, it's time for another Countdown to Classic call, and today we welcome two fine gentlemen, one of which I've been busting to talk to again on the show. And, well, Boosh, we've spoken before, but I can't remember if I've actually published one of our chats on the show. But welcome, Boosh. How are you?
Thank you, man. Good to be here.
Do you remember if you've been on the show before or not?
I don't know if I was on one of your podcasts. We were doing your drunk talks one.
That's right. No, I don't think I published that one for good reason. But we also welcome Gleb. How are you, man?
Hey, happy to be back.
It's good to have you back, man. And today, everyone, we're going to be discussing something that's just come up again in the last couple of days. Look, a lot of the things the show has been talking about lately have come up at the last second because news is coming up. People are playing the beta. Things are being discussed. Talking points are sort of firing up the forums and whatnot. Even, obviously in-game stuff is coming up too. But I wanted to take a quick moment to discuss something that, and I feel the show would be remiss if we just ignored it. Obviously, it's great to talk about the game, but we want to talk about the issues surrounding the game as well. That's part of, the news portion of Countdown to Classic. So I won't be shying away from this. Some people sort of get the impression like, Josh, stay in your lane. Don't talk about what other people are saying. But if it's newsworthy, it's newsworthy. And the community is abuzz over the topic of stream sniping as well, because obviously a very, very, very large streamer in Sodapoppin, I think that's a pretty fair assessment, has come out recently and given his view on an angle that he has on stream sniping in World of Warcraft Classic when it comes to B. Obviously, a lot of the streamers are experiencing some things on the beta, and it's got them all talking about how things will be in Classic. And his views were deemed to be somewhat controversial, and I will try and summarize as succinctly as I can. And to be fair to Sodapoppin, just sort of say that I think he stopped short of saying something like, stream snipers should be banned. Please correct me if I'm wrong there, but I think the gist of his argument was he wanted to shun stream snipers. On his server, if he was aware that someone was a stream sniper, he wanted to let his faction know, he wanted to let the other faction know, and effectively socially shun that person so that they would struggle to find groups and, play the game effectively on that server because of what they'd done to, him or someone else on stream. Now, this is an issue that is, one talking point by itself. But also he went on to say, obviously, that he found a dividing line between lobby ganking. He said, hey, I'm a lobby ganker. That's a different kind of asshole. I think it's, I'm an asshole. I gank lobbies. I grieve people that way. But I think that's fine, effectively, is what he was intimating. But he drew the line at stream sniping, saying there were, they're different kinds of beasts, if you will. So, Boosh, I'll start with you, and let's just... This is a bit of a touchy one, and we'll go through it sort of as eloquently, as I stuff that up, as eloquently as we can, and just sort of say, first and foremost, do you feel, well, how about this? What do you think about stream sniping in general? You do a little bit of streaming yourself.
Yeah, so I think the stream sniper, you put yourself out on this PvP server and on a platform where people can see your exact location. I think you're kind of asking for PvP, especially if you're like out ganking yourself or something like that. I think stream sniping is like, I don't know if I'd say okay if you're getting like on a level of harassment, but I think you expect that as a streamer, or you should expect it anyway.
Now, Boosh, I should ask you as well. As we mentioned, you stream as well. Have you ever been the victim of a stream sniping?
Yeah, actually, when I was playing on Northdale, just leveling up to practice my rounds, me and my friend were leveling in Duskwood. I had about 15 viewers was all, and there's a rogue that was just harassing my leveling partner, just killing him over and over again, no matter where he was. He wouldn't kill me, but he would kill my partner. So it was setting leveling back a little bit.
How did you react to that on stream?
I was okay with it. I thought it was funny, kind of. My partner wasn't too amused.
I can imagine with all those runbacks. Gleb, if I just asked you generally, what's your take on stream sniping in general?
Yeah, I have to agree with Boosh that they're really putting themselves in this position, and if they're whining about it, they can take so many steps to avoid it, whether it's going on a different server, not streaming, putting a delay on. They're just kind of complaining about a problem that they're...
Yeah, and obviously another option is, the concept that we're not unfamiliar with, bodyguards as well. They'll have their fans running around with them who can, perhaps protect them from the potential stream snipers coming their way. But it's something that it's definitely, we talk about the pros and cons of streaming, and it's great to be able to broadcast to people and have, people come along and want to hang out with you and whatnot. But yes, it does come with cons that people, I think, obviously need to accept as well. And I think streamers generally are aware of these cons. It's just the attitude towards them that will vary from streamer to streamer. Now, I, stream as well, as many of you know. I'm far from anything huge. I stream along to a fun audience. We get about 50 people when I stream, but, I had a fan come along and not quite stream snipe me the other day. And if they're listening along, they'll get a kick out of this. But a fan sent me a screenshot of, them stalking me as I was streaming the other day. And they were in stealth as a druid sitting right behind me on my ass as I was questing away in Hillsbrad. And they just said, Josh, just so you know, I could have pulled the trigger. And I got a big kick out of that. I thought it was very funny. But, stream sniping is going to happen. And as you guys say, I've put my position out there. If it happens, it happens. People have watched me and have been like, oh, Josh, I think you got stream sniped just then, when I have been attacked by the opposite faction. But, it doesn't really, the stream sniping doesn't bother me. It's more, just losing that bothers me because I'm terrible at PvP. But I think the other sub-argument here, before we go on to sort of stream sniping in general, is what do you guys think on Soda's point that they're different kind of beasts? Do you differentiate between the kind of person that, let's say, actively camps someone as a stream sniper versus actively camping someone as a lobby ganker? Boosh, what do you reckon about that?
So I don't think there's much of a difference there. I think harassment is harassment. If you're going to sit there and camp somebody for hours on end for no reason, I think that's kind of I don't know. It's a little touchy subject, I guess, because I guess if you want to waste your time doing that, that's one thing. I put that on borderline harassment, and I don't necessarily agree with people doing that, but.
What about you, Gleb? Can you see any kind of argument for the fact that those are different people, or it's pretty similar behavior? What do you think?
Yeah, so I'm actually going to have to disagree with you. And I think they are both obviously harassment, but they have different consequences. If I'm thinking about lobby ganking, like when you had the Pirates of the Pancreas on your episode where they kind of sit in Red Ridge and just shut the zone down pretty much, they have the purpose, like they describe, they want to bring 60s there and they want to try and do an all-out brawl. And then also, if you're getting ganked on that character, you can just switch to another character, go to a different zone, and then move on with it. But if you're a streamer and your stream is still on and someone's stream sniping you, they're going to keep stream sniping you no matter what you do. So I think like one can get completely shut down from playing at all, as opposed to the other one will just have to move and still be able to play. So that's why I see them as a little bit different.
That's a very good point, and honestly something that I hadn't considered, and it's good to refresh our memories about, yes, some of the points that the Pirates of the Pancreas raised on the show, which is still to this day a very controversial topic. A lot of listeners got their feathers ruffled, obviously, by those guys voicing their opinions about why they do what they do. But, it was still important, I think, to hear from their point of view about some of those griefing commitments that they make, if you will, or why they try to get these battles happening. Now, I guess the next step would be there's also the other player who, while the pirates, as they say, we do it to create all-out warfare, there are definitely people that gank lobies for the opposite purpose of, no, I don't want to create warfare. I just want to fucking ruin someone's day. And I guess those are the people that might be a little bit more like someone who just sits on a streamer and snipes them, time after time after time. But one of the things that this is also sort of spawned as an argument is how we feel about stream sniping in general. And, a lot of people are going to be watching streamers when WoW Classic comes, and people are sort of a bit unsure about exactly what is and is not allowed, if you will. And my opinion, my understanding, I should say, is that, and Boosh, you might know a bit more about this than me, is that it's against Twitch TOS to actively stream snipe if you're streaming as well. Is that right?
I think it is. I think Twitch is actually suspended people.
Yeah, so if hypothetically, if I were streaming and I know you're streaming, Boosh, and I open your stream and I'm on my stream, obviously like probably talking about like, oh, I'm just going to check where Boosh is. Oh, there he is. I'll go snipe him now. That's the kind of behavior that seems to be against Twitch TOS. But the important distinguishing factor here is that's Twitch. That's not World of Warcraft TOS. So the other side of the coin is that whilst the platform of, streamers is highly against this, the actual game itself says nothing about it. It's go nuts. Is that your understanding, Gleb?
Yeah, no, that's what I've heard too, is that it's really against Twitch TOS, and I'm not sure how many of the people that are interested in stream sniping are streaming as well. It seems like a lot of the people are people that just hate streamers in general, so they may not even be part of the Twitch community, so they may not give a shit if it's against Twitch TOS, if they can do as much as they want.
Now, guys, I'd ask you for your predictions about what's going to happen when we start to see stream sniping happen en masse in Classic, because I'll just go on a bit of a rant here for a second. I think we can all agree. And I should say, guys, sorry, one reason you're not hearing an opposing argument on this particular call, and that you won't, is I don't think I've bumped into any opinions online or spoken to anyone who is actually of the thought that streamers should be protected. So I don't think it's a controversial opinion to have, the bulk of callers or anything like that say, no, stream sniping is going to happen. It's perfectly fine. Just kind of streamers will have to deal with it. So if anyone's listening going, oh, Josh, you didn't get someone on who wants stream snipers banned. Well, I think that would be a pretty hard task, to be honest with you. But, by all means, if you're listening and you want to put that forward, get in touch with me. But guys, in terms of predictions of what's going to happen with streamers, newsflash for every streamer, I don't care if you're big, medium, small, they're coming for you. People are coming for you. I am completely aware of this, and I'm ready to wear the repercussions of, even broadcasting to a somewhat smaller audience. I know that person, the druid, the lovely druid, the great fan who just wanted to tease me a little bit and say that he could have had me if he wanted to, that person won't be so nice when it's actually Classic. Not that person in particular, but I'm saying there will be others out there who will take every opportunity they can. They'll watch my stream. They'll go, you know what? This stupid Australian, I'm going to ruin his next 30 minutes and just come after me. I realize that is a possible, thing that's going to come along when I stream a bit more regularly. Now, there are bigger streamers who have much bigger fish to fry. And I think that if these guys don't have a really solid, like, phalanx around them, guarding them, which they will do, but they're going to be up shit creek. And I think a lot of streamers are going to have some very frustrating moments on stream when effectively more than one person, let's say like a gank squad, just goes, you know what? We're shutting down this stream for an hour. Boosh, do you think that's something that's going to start happening?
I think the people that are anti that streamer, that is definitely a possibility.
So what kind of things do you envision happening in terms of their options? Do you think we'll see big squads going after big streamers? Do you think, we talk about examples like Angui back in the vanilla days who just sat in one zone for months on end just to own it. I think we're going to get an Angui who just sits on one streamer for months on end.
I think that's when those big wars start to break out where the streamers bring them on in to fight. They'll end up giving up everyone or sooner.
Yeah. Now, Gleb, what do you think? What do you think we'll see?
Yeah, so I think Sodapoppin just put a giant target on his back. I think you're going to see a lot of people kill him, and especially the comment that he made that he wants people to be shunned for stream sniping. It wouldn't surprise me if there's guilds on his server called like the Shunned or some kind of variant on that their sole purpose is just to camp him and others.
I think there was a Reddit post saying that there's someone trying to make a guild called the Black.
Yeah, the Blacklisted. Yeah, the Blacklisted. That's right. But I understand partly where Soda's coming from in terms of, well, if someone is stream sniping me and I have good friends on the other faction, yeah, sure, I'll ask my friends like, hey, this guy was a jerk to me. He camped me for 2 hours the other day. Don't run with him. You could ask that, outside of a stream. I sort of see where he's coming from there. But in terms of the global en masse, this person has crossed a line. They should not be able to enjoy World of Warcraft on the same level that we do. I do think that's a little bit much. It's, as we say, World of Warcraft. People are going to do things to fuck with you and kill you, and that's kind of why we play the game in a way. So I do think there's a little bit of a stretch there, but I understand the mentality behind it, but I think the actual practice is a little bit much. But is there anything else that you guys want to say about stream sniping in general? Do you enjoy it when you see it on a stream, or does it ruin your enjoyment of watching your favorite streamer?
I love it. I personally absolutely love seeing them get stream sniped and then complain about it. I remember seeing this one video of this guy that was playing on Lights Hope, and he was in Booty Bay just constantly being camped, and the video pretty much just ends with him saying, like, I can't even play this game. I just thought it was hilarious that, he can just turn off the stream and just keep playing, but he was just on stream getting camped over and over and over to the point where he didn't even want to play anymore.
And I mean, it's one of those things. That will happen to me. 100% in Classic. I will get frustrated. You will probably see a clip of me fucking losing my mind. But as I said earlier, it will be more about the fact that I'm dying as opposed to the fact that I'm getting stream sniped. Yeah, I might go, fuck, maybe this person's watching the stream. You son of a bitch, blah, blah, blah. But like, in terms of any kind of tantrums of like stream sniping should be outlawed, or like I can't see myself saying any of that. But Boosh, any final thoughts on this topic in general that you want to get out there?
No, I think stream sniping is not. It provides you content, if anything. Like you can take it as negatively as positively as you want. But I think what really happened with Soda's meltdown, I guess you could kind of call it a stream sniping meltdown, is he's just not the greatest at explaining things, and I fall in that same line with him. So he might be a little bit misunderstood, and he might have misspoken a little bit, but he was probably just having a bad day and decided to vent on stream.
To be fair to Soda, I think a little bit along that line as well. I think this is just a reactionary thing, and maybe he sort of didn't explain himself as well as he wanted to, but I think he's obviously put forward a little bit of where his heart is at, and some of the points he raised I disagree with, but I'm not really, incensed by what he said, nor am I holding it against him too much, even though we're obviously having a 20-minute call on the show here talking about it. So I appreciate sort of, that angle as well. But any final points from you, Gleb, on stream sniping in general? I agree with what you guys have said in that it's also something that can be turned into a benefit for a huge streamer. If someone is coming after them, that's content. Now you go, okay, I've got someone who's made me, let's turn around. Let's make them public enemy number one. Let's provide some entertainment on stream. If you got thousands of people watching and you go, let's build an army. Let's go after that person now. And you turn the tables somewhat. So I think it's all entertainment. But Gleb, any final thoughts, mate?
Yeah, for me, I think it's going to be very interesting to see how the server populations and dynamics play out with the streamers in their server. The reason I bring that up is I've seen a lot of people talk about avoid a streamer server, no matter what you do, never play on a streamer server. And the fact that you can pre-create your characters 2 weeks beforehand and pick your server, everyone will know what server the streamers are on. They're going to try their best to avoid that. I know personally I'm part of a guild that's part of a coalition of about 40 other guilds that were trying to pick a specific server to all roll on together without streamers to have a very good community. So I do wonder if there will be one server that's very streamer and streamer fan heavy that does actually end up having a very different WoW experience than all the other servers because they get so heavily influenced by like a very, very select kind of oligarchy on a server. So I think it'll be very interesting to see how that all plays out.
Oh, yeah, and I think that's coming as well. And on that same server that's heavily populated by big streamers, that's where you'll get these guilds doing the stream sniping, and they'll band together, I think, and go, you know what? Let's get 30 people together who just want to spend their days going after big streamers. I think that will be a thing. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, Pirates of the Pancreas, calling for you guys to go save us on that server, kill all the
All right, guys. Well, look, I just wanted to make this one sort of in, out, snappy. You guys have been fantastic. Boosh, thanks so much for being on the show, man. And just a reminder, everyone, while we're sitting here talking about it, you can find Boosh streaming over at twitch.tv/Booshies. That's BOOSHIES.
Thanks for having me, man.
And Gleb, thanks so much, mate.
Yeah, always happy to be here.
All right, it's time for another countdown to Classic Call, and I couldn't be happier to welcome back an old friend of the podcast. You all know him. You all love him. Mr. John Staats. How are you, mate?
Thank you, Josh. Thank you for having me. It's good to be back. It's been too long.
It's been way too long between drinks, and so much has happened, I feel, since the last time we talked. Obviously, for you, the craziness behind the WoW Diary. Now, I did speak to you in a follow-up call after the Kickstarter really blew up, and you talked about how that amazing support came through and you were touched by that. And obviously you got to do all the things you wanted to do with the book, and that went out to the people who funded it. But there was a next step of the plan, and that was obviously to have the book available for, a wider release. Why don't we just quickly get you to tell people what's been happening? And because I get asked all the time, hey, Josh, is the WoW Diary available anywhere to just buy on Amazon or anything? Or can I sign up to a website and just get it sent to my house now? So why don't you tell people what's going on?
So, yeah, I've been working on fulfilling a lot of orders on Kickstarter. There's still 1% that while I have actually fulfilled them, they were lost in the mail. So I'm sending it again to them. And while that happens, I've also been sending inventory to Amazon, and it's getting integrated into their fulfillment system. And while that's happening, I've also translated it to a PDF and ebook formats. I don't actually have my account. I thought I'd be able to just add that to my account, but Amazon Kindle is a separate account entirely. So it's going to be 2 weeks before the PDF or the ebook is available on Amazon. So unfortunately, but the regular WoW Diary hardback is on Amazon by now, and it was kind of Amazon just made it available without. I didn't even know until a few days later that it was actually selling. So it's kind of a wild ride. I'm holding on for dear life is what I'm doing. Actually, another easy way. It's always been you could always pre-order the book on the wowdiary.com. That's this little store that there's basically just one item in the store. You can click on the WoW Diary.
John, I must say as well, if people for some reason are not aware of what John is talking about, it's the WoW Diary, and this is a book that I cannot recommend more. It is absolutely amazing. The positive reviews that came in on the show's Discord for this book, along with my own review of it, I've loved it. Now, John, obviously it's such great timing to have that book come up as being available now, because you've got a bit more free time on your hands now. And we talked earlier about how Kevin Jordan has just finished up his amazing run on this show, and he was so good with giving so much of his free time up for the listeners to explain a lot more about behind the scenes of the development of the game with the classes. And I've organized with you to basically do the same thing for the dungeons, and people are really excited about this. And I just asked you off the call, hey, John, which dungeons would you be comfortable talking about? And you said all of them. And I said, oh boy, you just signed yourself up for a bit of a run on this show.
Hey, you know what? I'm very happy to get some love for the dungeons, because one of the things about the dungeon crew is we'd all work in the same room. We'd always mutter to each other that nobody ever on the forums ever commented about the dungeons. Like, the only comments about the dungeons are the loot, which are they're made in the last, like, it takes a day or two to make a bunch of the loot for the dungeon, and the months that it takes to make the dungeon itself, there's just almost no comments. So I'll take anybody you want to pat me on the back. So don't be shy.
Not a worry. And obviously, we'll be allowing you every opportunity as well every week that we have John on the show. And I'm anticipating something similar to what we did with Kevin. This might be, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 installments. Who knows? We'll get through as many dungeons as we can, as much time as John is willing to afford the show. And each time we'll obviously be shouting out a huge plug for the WoW Diary. And I do want everyone once again to go check that out. But let's get into it. One last thing, John, I actually want to touch on before we get to breaking down BRD, which was what we're going to be doing in this call, is I would be remiss not to bring up, we talked about your first appearance on the show when you made what came to be a relatively famous quote amongst the listeners and the community, was you saying, obviously, that if World of Warcraft Classic were to be released before 2020, you would eat your hat. Now,
yes,
John, if I was going to say, if we've got the imaginary hat in front of you right now, how does it taste?
Oh, no. I see it now. It's a big bowl hat. I'm going to soften this up a little in the stove, get a little sauce on it first before I start eating. And it hasn't actually shipped. We've seen game companies delay shipping, so we're not quite there. It's not quite eating time.
You're still in the running, absolutely. And to be fair, look, it was only a few months away from 2020. If it does indeed come on August 26/27, as they've announced. So I thought I'd just give you a bit of a fun tongue-in-cheek barb there. But anyway.
No, I totally deserve it. I'm part of the outside looking in now. I'm a Blizzard fan. I'm not like one of the devs anymore. So I don't know what's going on, so.
All right, guys. Well, look, let's get into it. As I said, we're going to be talking everything and anything BRD. This is going to be an extensive chat about the design history and the choices that John and the crew made in putting together BRD, what is generally referred to as the greatest dungeon in vanilla World of Warcraft, all of World of Warcraft, all of MMORPG history. This is a beloved dungeon, and I thought it'd be a great one to get stuck into first. And I've enlisted two amazing callers on the line right now who have 1,000 questions for John, and I want to introduce them right now. Once again, welcome back to the show, the GM of the EU Horde Countdown Guild, Gromboli. How are you?
Hey, thanks for having me. Really good.
And we've just had a last second joinee who I'm so happy to have here as well. Vilius, back again. How are you, mate?
Good. How are you, Josh?
Very good, man. I'm so happy to have you here. Now, the reason I'm happy to have you guys here is I just want to throw in this little bit of a disclaimer. And I know it's regrettable to have, someone like me as a host of the show who hasn't done a lot of the high level content in vanilla. You guys know I didn't raid. And I've just explained that I dinged 60 about 3 or 4 weeks before Burning Crusade came out. I didn't even run many high level dungeons. So BRD, sorry to tell you guys, I've run it once 14 years ago. I remember nothing about BRD. So whilst that's regrettable, guess what? These two legends on the line know it like the back of their hands, and they've got 1,000 questions for John, and I will play the role of traffic controller. So, John, let me start you off in this regard. If I just start very, very broadly, BRD, were you happy with it?
Oh, yeah, I was extremely happy with it. The Blackrock dungeons were my first foray into architecture. I had built a lot of caves and a lot of caverns. I did the Wailing Caverns. I did Razorfin Downs, and I wanted to do something architectural. And the dwarves had a texture set. I think Brian Morrisroe painted the texture set. It was at least 60 textures. And you compare that to Razorfin Downs when I think there's like 15, or Wailing Caverns with just the same, 20. I mean, having that many very malleable textures too was just a joy to do. So I was able to just jam. I started with basically everything started with Blackrock Mountain. That was probably my highlight of probably my best single file that there wasn't really even a concept for it. There was just, or rather, Metzen had this concept that was kind of like, kind of hinky. And so I kind of stayed away from it, but I kind of did, a little bit of both. But, yeah. And so I had a texture set, and that's really what I started with. That was the inspiration. So I was just looking forward to just finally building some architecture for a change. So okay. That was the result. It wasn't anything fancier than that.
In terms of how you approach this one in particular, it's, the largest 5-man dungeon in the game. It is really felt to be considerably more extensive in terms of content than anything else that's out there in terms of dungeons, because people say, hey man, BRD, that could take me between 4 to 6 hours to get through. When you were designing this, was that in the back of your head going, holy shit, this might actually take people a long while to get through. Maybe I've gone too far.
Oh, no. I mean, in the back of my head, okay, so BRD, when this was done years before we knew how big a party was going to be. So we had no idea how long content would take to get through. We had no idea. We didn't have high level spells. Like, this is a high level. We didn't know how tanking was really going to work. We didn't know how healing was really going to work as far as aggro, what its contribution was. We just had no idea. So the idea of whether or not this is going to be 6 hours or 12 hours, 6 hours was probably the target mark that a lot of the designers were going through, because the two main guys, Jeff Kaplan, Rob Pardo, Alan Adham, these were the main designers of WoW when we look at the product of WoW. And they were all EverQuest fans. And the paradigm in EverQuest is the bigger the better, because the dungeon is not instanced. So we had no idea. Instancing wasn't even working. Like, the functionality, it was just a file existing in space that we could walk around in. And that was basically what we knew from the dungeon design for years during all of its development. There were no monsters spawned in it. We had nothing tested actually inside the dungeon for technological reasons. So the scope of the dungeon was, we'll build it and we'll see if it's big enough. We were always concerned that people would just learn how to flip the dungeon real fast. And that was the thing that a lot of MMOs had run into, is people would just go through the content too quickly. So we were just paranoid that the dungeons weren't going to be big enough. That's why Wailing Caverns was so huge. That was one of the early ones too. So that was actually the target that we were going for. Big, big, big.
Very good. Now, I've got 2 more questions, and then we're going to let these callers go nuts on you, John. So I just ask in terms of general design choices and look and feel and aesthetic of this place. Now, obviously the zone has we've talked about this before on the show with you and Kevin Jordan. Around this area, there's a huge Lord of the Rings influence, and on the game in general. You guys talk about, you saw the movies at the time, and obviously that played a lot into what you were doing in the game.
Right.
But in particular, once you step inside BRD and you're sitting there mapping textures and putting the place together, as listener Ryan Force points out right now in Twitch chat, BRD to them, gave a massive Mines of Moria vibe. Were you going for that, or what were you going for with the look of the place?
The Mines of Moria had an influence on a lower Blackrock Spire. That was the rubbled out. That's what we describe when we take architecture, we rubble it out, and it's a great way of creating some really cool views, framed views, punching through walls. Lower Blackrock Spire was absolutely Mines of Moria, and that was lower Blackrock Spire, and then BRD was Ironforge. Ironforge was actually textured. That's actually why there were so many textures. Is Brian was able to just take the dwarven textures and put a dark iron flare on them. So I just had a lot of architecture of Cameron and Aaron Keller. Cameron Lamprecht was a level designer, and Aaron Keller had tag teamed on Ironforge. And I just was able to just steal entire building facades and just shove them into the wall and say, hey, look, there's, so as part of it was just kind of stolen. But the rings, I just wanted a different vibe than Ironforge. So it was mostly Ironforge was the inspiration, believe it or not.
Okay, well, now that you've mentioned, the rings, I want to start going through the different areas of this huge instance. And guys, what I'll get you to do is I'll ask this one to kick John off, then I'm going to throw it over to you. This is your chance to ask all your follow-up questions. And what I want to do is really tear this place down kind of area by area. So I've just sent you links that obviously lists a lot of the places that you can go through in BRD, and we'll start asking questions based on those. So John, we talk about places like, the Ring of Law. Tell us about all these little areas within areas that you built up within this massive span. And what were you thinking, sort of, if I combine, the detention block and the Ring of Law, like what was going through your head here?
Right. So the Ring of Law, is that the name of the prison, or is that the gladiator?
The detention block was the name for the prison area where the cells are.
Okay.
It's the
Ring of Law. Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. Right. So what I wanted to do was, so and the reason why I don't know the names is the names they come from Metzen after everything is built. Then he looks at it and he says, okay, what should that be called? And he does that through WoW Edit, which is a completely different editor. We're often not even in the meeting when that gets named. So it's kind of weird that I have no association with a lot of the names, but I wanted to bridge the prison section with the city, and that to me is a very important thing to do, is have transitions between areas that aren't awkward. Like, I don't want the library next to the slaughterhouse. It doesn't make any sense at all. And there's a lot of very careless decisions sometimes when and that comes from just building, scripting dungeons in D&D. Like, I would just build a dungeon like, okay, now how would where would be the main traffic in this dungeon? Where would be their water source? Where would there be sleeping quarters? And I just kind of imagined how a society of dark iron dwarves would live there. And that kind of is how I would generally lay things out. But I just wanted a bridge between a prison section, which was one of the things that Metzen called for in the dark iron dwarf area, with the city. And so that's kind of a gladiator ring is that basically bridges the gap. And it does it so, I think, very nicely, because you can imagine people leaving the city to check out the gladiator arena without having to go through the prison proper, because no one wants to walk through the prison to see the gladiator arena, at least not polite society anyway. So that's kind of how that happened, and that's how inspirations happen. Like, there wasn't any call for the arena. That was just something I came up with.
All right, Gromboli, Vilius, first in, best dressed. Anything that John's just said you want to pick up on, or any other areas you want to go from there?
The Ring of Law, the arena area, the first time I walked in ahead of my group and the fence closed, I was like, what? What happened?
Oh, yeah.
That was really sneaky. You learned from that. Yeah, that was amazing.
Well, it's funny. This was one of the more scripted areas where there were doors and gates. Not a lot of the dungeons actually had doors and gates, and we learned. There was the big one in Oldamon was our very first one. So the Indiana Jones sequence, and they spent so many resources making that stupid one door that they said, well, let's not do this again, because we could have had 2 or 3 more monsters for what we actually put into just the sequence that lasts for 60 seconds and never happens, until you redo the dungeon. But no, that was not by design. Like all those little things, people who script single player levels for like first person shooters, they always have the same problem with the players sticking together. It's a huge problem, actually, unless you have enough technology to let people play on different areas. But yeah, you can't keep people together. You can't depend on where they're going to be. So you got to be very sneaky about some of that stuff. The doors on top when you're entering the city, the fancy doors where you're running through the doors, like the top half of the doors, that was just it was a miracle that it worked out, for one. But yeah, they're very hard to do. Doors are hard to do in MMOs, so we kind of didn't want to do that too often for exactly the reason that you said. Yeah.
It was fun to find out the first time. But you learn from it.
Yeah.
By the way,
and
who came up with the idea that you had to die to collect the quest for the key?
We realized that people were probably going to die, and that was the route. I believe we're talking about, like, if you're a ghost, you run past the architect in Blackrock
in the middle.
Yeah. That's
you go over the chain, and then there's Alter. There he is standing.
Yeah. It's just the cool thing. I mean, I remember when we saw Lord of the Rings, everybody saw the effect that when Frodo puts on the ring, we said, that should be when we die. It should look exactly like that. And so that's what our death sequence was like. I don't know if EverQuest had any changes. Like when you're doing a corpse run, I don't know if you were actually a ghost when you were running. And it was weird conceptually that you were raising up at a graveyard and then running away from the graveyard to go to your corpse and reconstitute. It didn't make a lot of sense, actually, but it's just one of the things we realized that, oh, wait, if we're a ghost, we ought to be able to talk to other ghosts. So it just happened that's just the quest giver had that technology at their disposal when he was working on BRD. So,
Vilius, if I can throw it to you, is there anything coming out of that you've got for John, or anything moving on to the next area, or anything like that?
This is exciting for me because I think BRD is the most well-designed 5-man in vanilla by far. It's just like it's a complete world in its own. But I think my favorite section is definitely the Lyceum. That's where you have the mobs that respawn very quickly, and you have to find the flames to open the door.
Yeah, the flame carriers.
Yeah, flame carriers. So that to me, I was a tank back then, and that dungeon in general taught me more about tanking than most of the other content. But I just remember, finally making it through the Lyceum and how good that felt. And then we started selling runs to a 5th person to bring it through, because a lot of groups couldn't navigate that space.
Yeah, my group was one of them. I think I've only been through BRD all the way to the Princess. I think I've only done it once. Just to get that. The Princess quest was very key to get actually the very best item in all of WoW's history, which is that +2% in crit at the time. Scott Mercer had just come from Team 1. Scott Mercer was also integral. He had scripted Molten Core, and it's because we kind of ninja'd the entire raid Molten Core off the books. Like, we kind of didn't tell the producers we were doing it. We were sneaking about it. Jeff Kaplan had enlisted one of the designers on Team 1. They were working on Warcraft 3. And he was a big EverQuest fan, and he wanted to work on WoW, but he had to work on Warcraft 3. So he built basically that dungeon. He scripted the entire thing on his own off the books, and he just said, I'll come up with a new item. And it was a trinket that gave you 2% extra crit chance that it was by far the best item in the game. This is before crit rating came around. So you can never, ever replace this trinket with anything better. Like, what are you going to do? Give somebody 4% chance of crit? Like, otherwise you've got an inflation problem. Yeah.
You mean the Hand of Justice?
I don't know.
That was the melee trinket, huh?
Where you get 2% chance for an extra attack.
Yeah, that one. Yeah,
that's an excellent item to this day, and people are looking forward to farming that in Classic.
Looking for more lava runs incoming.
Well, now that you've mentioned the lava run, sorry, I'll go for it, John. Finish off that one.
Go ahead. No.
I was just going to say, now that those words lava run have come up, I'm getting asked in Twitch chat as well while we're here. 8 Count is saying, Josh, please ask John if he was upset about the Molten Core attunement lava skip path in BRD. And for reference, it was possible to jump along the lava over to the end of the dungeon and grab the piece needed for Molten Core attunement without having to fight most of the mobs.
No, that is honestly, stuff like that it's all good. I mean, it's totally all good. I had about 5 years experience building first person shooters, and with first person shooters with Quake levels, you had rocket jumping. And so you could have players finding like routes that you could never, ever imagine. Even though you're building the file for months and months and months, you work on this thing, and then some person says, I know how to cheat to get past all this, and they do. So I don't mind that. The drop down in Blackrock Depths was another thing that Jeff said, hey, this is kind of cool to let people, sneak past stuff. That's fine. In fact, it was just too long. We were expecting people to burn through the content. These dungeons were way too long, and the players were right in the shortcuts.
I always figured that skip was intentional because there's mobs down there, there's destroyers down there, and so sure you guys can take that shortcut, but there's stuff waiting for you.
We thought the mobs would actually just prevent people from getting past. Mm-hmm. We again didn't know like what the balance was or how long it would take to kill an elite mob, or I can't remember if they're elite or not, but we thought that they might just dissuade people. And also another thing that changes is how collision works. Colin Murray was the programmer who he coded collision. And sometimes when you stood on a 45-degree angle, you stayed there. And like a month later, you would slide down. Then a month later, you would stand there. And a month later, you would slide down. So how the actual walls stopped people from, running along the edges, I actually didn't think people would be able to do it at the time. Just I angled the walls going into the lava. And I think, honestly, Jeff asked me at one point he did ask me to make it easier for people to do lava runs. He also made the same request to make it jumping into the Blackrock spires from the statue in the Blackrock Mountain. That little porch, that little overhang that you hop up so that you don't have to run past those mobs that have slow poisons on them. Oh, it's just the worst. But so we were kind of in favor of the shortcuts after we had played the dungeons ourselves and realized, it's really not fun to actually do full clears over and over and over just to get to the raid dungeons. So Yeah.
Okay.
Learning.
If I can just follow up, John, obviously Vilius brought up that area of the Lyceum. Is there anything else that you remember in putting that area together?
Yeah, well, it's kind of funny. The Lyceum was an afterthought. Everything, the Lyceum and the throne room, the final room was actually, I think his name is Flame Lash. It's this epic room. It's probably one of my favorite rooms in all of WoW. Is I designed it to be overlooking this lava. Oh boy, I wish I remembered the mob's name. He was. If you run through the lower route through the city, you go into right after you get to the. He looked like executives.
Ambassador Flamelash.
Okay,
number 16.
Ambassador. That's right. Yes. Okay. So that was the boss room. That was the boss room. Okay. So BRD got bigger when Jeff said, "Hey, it's not big enough. We don't think
Double
it's big enough." Now they hadn't played it. Oh yeah, I've had dungeons that they've said, yeah. So it was bigger. That was the thing, and I was out of ideas. So I actually built the Lyceum. I actually didn't think the Lyceum was very interesting as a room. It was kind of easy. It was copy and paste. What I did is I just built a bunch of pillars. I had no idea what else to do, and the same could be said about the throne room. I actually don't like doing rooms that have mirrored sections that are symmetrical because they're kind of cheap unless you're actually doing something like a church or like a throne room. Okay, I think it's appropriate in a throne room to have it, completely symmetrical. But I built those rooms I had no idea what else to do. I wasn't proud of them at all because how does that compare with Flame Lash's perch over there? I mean, his perch is so epic. So when they designed the Lyceum, they were super excited about it. I remember all the designers like, "Oh my God, we got this great idea. This is going to be so awesome." And I was like, "Really? You really enjoyed that room? Okay, that's kind of funny." I had the same thing about Razor Gore. It's a symmetrical room, but the designers just looked at the geometry and said, "Hey, let's do this crazy event of running through the first room in Blackwing's lair." So. Yeah, I'm not actually, that wasn't part of the original plan, and I'm not super proud of it architecturally, but the designers saved my bacon, so bully for them.
All right, Gromboli, what else you got?
No, the Onyxia quest line. Amazing how it's so long, and it starts in the Burning Steps. Goes through the BRD.
Yeah.
There's so many quest lines that you manage to get into the dungeon. The melting of the dark iron, everything makes it so complete. It's Heart of the Mountain. The amount of times you had to run it and collect the keys to open all the vaults to be able to summon the guy. It's sick.
The reason why, this is also the reason why the Uber dungeons were so big, is we didn't know how long it was going to take to level 60. Now, we had played EverQuest, we had played Dark Age of Camelot, and a lot of the better MMOs. It took forever to get from 59 to 60. It took forever to get from 58 to 59. And so we were making tons and tons of areas. and then Rob Pardo at the end of the game goes, "You know what? We want to make this friendly to casual players. We'll let people just breeze through these levels and hit the max level and just start on the end game content." So we were like, all the work we had done on all these different areas that were actually, you could just miss them. So you could just hit 60 and just miss them, which, Josh was saying he hasn't even had to play those levels because you level so fast. I mean, even at Burning Crusade, the loot was better and you could just level so quickly that you didn't And it was a pain in the ass to get a group together to do Blackrock Depths. Certainly, Blackrock Depths or Upper Blackrock Spire at that time, because people had done it. It was really hard to get a group. Well,
the problem is that if you didn't play from the launch, the detail, and you went there often, you didn't know how the dungeon went and what to do and where to go to complete your quest. You just get lost there, you know. So a lot of people, and I noticed this on the private server that I played before, you know, that people, they were like, oh no, we don't want to go BRD because we don't know what to do there, you know. There is so much and we just get lost. And then they are so happy if somebody joins the party that actually says, well, I know this dungeon, you know, what do you want to do? You want to go there, do this? Well, then we have to go here, you know. And then they go like, oh my God, you know, that's really the biggest issue. That is so much. And lava runs, okay, everybody can go, you know, you go in, go to the arena, jump down at the pyro dude boss, bunny hop over the lava on the side, cross the bridge. And although there's a big shortcut, those fire elementals on that bridge, they could really spoil your party, or
definitely. That's what they're designed to do. And that's another mistake we made. Is we thought people would want to go to a dungeon over and over and over again, kind of like what they did with EverQuest. There would be different targets inside of a dungeon that which boss are you going after, you know, for EverQuest. And so that's when we did Uldaman, you couldn't do the entire dungeon in one. It actually required you to leave the dungeon, get another quest that actually opened up the key or something like that. And we didn't realize people wanted the closure of finishing the dungeon in one go. And that was new. Like, no one had ever even considered doing the entire dungeon as a casual experience. Just unheard of. No one had even thought of that, but that's how everybody wanted to do it. So that's another reason why the dungeons were just way too big, is we were building them so that people would go back and forth to different sections of the dungeon, rather than just, you know, hey, let's do the princess quest, you know.
John, I'll jump in here with the question. This has come up from Twitch chat from show listener and regular Balls of Steel, who says, John, how did you come up with the idea of the Dark Iron Vault and having players get random drop keys from mobs to open up the vaults for just random amounts of gold and grey items and the occasional green item? So do you remember the design process behind that vault area?
Refresh my memory. The Dark Iron Vault was in what room?
That's for the heart of the mountain.
Is that the Black Vault?
Okay.
Yeah, that's the Black Vault. That's where the heart of the mountain is. So you had to gather the random keys to open all the little lockers. First you had to open the big doors. Then inside there were the little chests you had to open. Then when all the big doors and the little chests were open, then the boss will spawn. He would come. He would, and the 4 big stone elementals that are standing there, they will be activated just like an Elderman. When you activate,
oh yeah,
you remember. And then in the end, the secret Black Vault opens, the Dark Vault opens, and there's the heart of the mountain in there. That was also something to find out.
That's right. Yeah. That happened probably when the quest designers get a hold of it and they're trying to figure out, okay, so how do we use these prisons? You know, we've got all these cells. How do we actually use this? I actually imagined there'd be a big bad monster in each one of these cells, and you would just unlock the door and the monster would just come out. But little did I know, monsters don't really pay attention to doors. They run right through doors. Now, there's a way to script them so that they don't run through doors, but it's a pain in the neck because then they can be, I don't know. We had mages blinking through doors. We had all kinds of crazy stuff. So we actually didn't put a lot of monsters inside the cells. So I think that's the quest designers saving everybody's bacon by looking at the dungeon and say, okay, what's not being used here? And the vault was, another just, hey, this is how to make this area kind of cool. So, yeah, I can't claim any credit to that other than just making areas for them to use their imagination.
No worries. Vilius, go for it.
I got to ask about the bar. So that's one of my favorite areas too, because it's like a puzzle, right? You've got 4 different ways to get through that back door, and just discovering all those different ways. Like I remember, like on the 10th time I've been through there, somebody discovered another way. It's like, so how did you guys come up with that?
Well, the bar event was Pat Nagel was the first quest designer on World of Warcraft. Pat and I and Kevin Jordan, we were lunch buddies. We would go to, restaurants, and we just talk about like what I'm building. It's like, hey, it's kind of cool to have a bar in World of Warcraft, and Pat liked that, especially with dwarves, because the big steins and a big bar fight is exactly what you do in World of Warcraft if you got a bar there. So no, that's just him having fun. Like Pat would just, I think he had lots of time. Like he would kind of like focus on some rooms. Like he spent a lot of time on the chess event in Karazhan. He spent weeks on the chess event in Karazhan, and the bar was just, there's so much flavor that he could actually do, because you can't really do that in a non-instanced area, because what if 2 people are doing it at the same time? There's lots of limitations of what you can do in a bar elsewhere in World of Warcraft. So with Blackrock Depths, you could script everything and just make it like an experience. So
it was fun to do the bar fight method at least once, but then you realize that takes the longest, I guess. So then you try to do maybe the love potion shortcut or the pickpocket the key.
That's all the quest designers just using different ideas. And frankly, it's a lot of it is testing. I don't know if a lot of that stuff has been reused very much because yes, you can keep scripting and doing stuff like crazy, but if that takes too much time, then that means you can't actually do other things that you probably get more bang for the buck. So they were also just testing, what works, what's what makes sense, what do we get the most bang for the buck for.
John, a great one's just come up in Twitch chat that I had something similar, but I might ask my one later. But this one is sort of somewhat what I had in mind. And Altieri43 asks, in general, when designing things like boss rooms, were the bosses and the mechanics already thought of, or were they a product of the room's design that you came up with? So it's sort of a chicken or the egg situation. Did you hand over your design to them and they said, fuck, John's made a really big room here, we'll put a huge boss in here? Or was it the other way around?
No, I think it's the former. That's a good question, by the way, because sometimes I think the least interesting fights are when you come up with a cool boss mechanic and then you build a room around it, because usually, you're going to work with the tools that you have, and the quest designers or the dungeon scripters, most of the monsters were tested in Westfall. So it was pretty, and Westfall was just because I think that's where the 000 point was in the world. I think that's our first area in the world. So when you just typed to 000, it was a quick way of getting everybody, ported to the same location. You could test a big monster. Usually they would look at the rooms. Like, first of all, they were so busy with stuff that planning, you couldn't plan, because you had no idea what kind of animations were going to be on monsters. The actual animations were a limiting effect that, if we only have one type of casting emote, we have to make a visual difference if it's an important casting event. So there would be some monsters that the monsters would actually decide, like what makes the most sense here to design a boss. So it was usually the dungeon. We knew the names of the bosses, and sometimes we like knew which type of creature model was going to be. Like we knew that, I don't know, if it's a rock giant as one of the bosses, then we'd say, okay, well, we'll need a big room here. Okay. And whatever that room is, but like Razor Gore is a good example where I had no idea what it did. It doesn't even look like a boss room, but it's an event that has it's got its own juice and its own vibe and its own flavor that is unlike a lot of boss rooms. And I think I like that type of style where it's not just, you have a big round room, and in the center of the round room is a giant monster, and it's just standing there. You kind of want, I don't like the big ceremonial type of rooms where it's just, I want to see something that's a little bit more functional. Like what did they use that room for? And I think those are the rooms that are a lot more fun, because then you can pull those ideas into the boss fight, and you're bridging the gap between dungeon and monster. So,
well, along the same lines, and Gromboli, I'll throw to you after this one, but we talked about the bar already, and considering that we brought up the Grim Guzzler, I was also wondering a similar thing, going, well, was that designed because you were handed some notes about what the, other producers wanted BRD to be? And they said, hey, we want this bar in there, or we want some kind of, quote unquote safe area in there, or a place to catch your breath? Or is that all you? I want to know, was that John Staats, baby?
Oh, that's another good question. Yeah, it's all John Staats, actually. So I'll give you Metzen's, this is literally the dungeon meeting for Blackrock Depths. Me be walking over to Chris Metzen's office. All right, he'd be, with his headphones, listening to heavy metal, typing, and I'd say, "Hey, Chris, what are we doing for Blackrock Depths? Like, what's the vibe of the Dark Iron Dwarves?" And he says, "Okay, they're like these cats are like." They're like the dwarves, obviously, but these guys are really into the elemental side of things, like earth elemental, and they're digging deep. I like he did come up with the idea of them digging deep enough to, this comes from Lord of the Rings, to summon Ragnaros. Yeah. Okay. All right. So it's their greed that unleashed and that's a cool idea. So it's like, yeah, that's basically the vibe. But Blackrock Depths that's their city. This is their home territory. They roll around in there, and that's basically the entire dungeon meeting. But for the concept, I had an expectation. Okay, there were some golems that were, and I made different, like I had different types of golems. There's the golems that they chiseled out at the beginning, and I kind of made that the lowest level golem that's more mechanical and very just, it's very prosaic, where you're just chiseling away the golem, and it gets fancier at the end, where I call the room Pour Your Own Golem Room, where there's a bunch of molds, and there's channels for lava to go into the molds, and it's apparent that they're pouring themselves a fire golem, or a molten golem or something like that. And so that's just looking at the art assets that, if Brandon Idle designs new monsters, I'm like, okay, how does that monster live inside this dungeon? Because it's the same family. I gotta use it because I'm starved for monsters. We all want to try to keep switching monsters back and forth. We don't want to fight the same monster over and over and over throughout one dungeon. So yeah, you're just looking at art assets at the time, and sometimes you build the dungeon and somebody comes up with a completely different monster that would have been perfect, and you want to go back into the dungeon and redo the room for that, that monster, but the moments pass. So yeah, that's just me riffing.
I love it. So the only thing you needed, the only impetus you needed to get there was Pat Nagel saying, I wonder if there was a bar in a dungeon.
Oh no, you know what? I didn't even, I came up with the bar. I wanted, No, the whole city area, I wanted to actually bring it down to a very common level. Like there's the domus. Okay, that's the household. Okay, it's just a household. There's no laboratory. There's no, I wanted to see what we could do. And that's so new in World of Warcraft. You don't ever see just a little, there's a kitchen area and then there's a bunch of, you don't see that in World of Warcraft anywhere. So when that does show up in a dungeon, the game, the quest designers have a blast with it. So the bar, all those little rooms, everything comes from, City of Dark Iron Dwarfs,
Got it.
Let's see what rooms we put in there.
Got it. Gromboli, go for it, man.
I'm looking at the map and then I'm realizing what is all in there in the dungeon, the 7, as I said, the way to learn how to melt dark iron, that you have to go to BRD actually to melt your dark iron. And I think that's the same philosophy as that you guys used with the first flasks, because then you had to go to Skolomans, little bridge.
Yeah.
That you had to go there to use the how do you call that? The special
alchemy lab or alchemy table.
Then
right.
you had to go there to where the boss was with the frost.
Yeah.
That's where the only place where you could make the flasks. It was a good philosophy.
That's from Eric Dodds did all the trade skills. As he looked at dungeons, he thought, it'd be kind of cool if we made just this cool little focus area that would be like one of the ingredients for putting this epic, trinket together or shield together or whatever it is. And that's just him completely unplanned. We knew that there would probably be areas like that, but I didn't have any concept of doing that. I wasn't making areas for trade skills. Now I will say that like where that little forge, that little in the lava fall, like by the bridge at the end, Eric did ask me to build that, and I thought that was kind of easy to do. It was a very natural. I liked how it was very low tech. There's not like a whole bunch of idolatry around it. It's not this big ceremony. It's this very earthy, very simple, very common, very low forge that you're, getting this heart of the mountain. That's the area where you make, your trinket. So.
Yeah, but still, you had to go there and you had to kill the mobs there. So it's not like you could just say, well, buy the mats of the auction house and I just go there on my own.
Well, let me tell you,
needed a group.
I think the trinket, I played a druid, and the trinket that gave a lot of armor, I think it gave you 500 armor. I leveled up alchemy to 60 for that trinket, then I dropped alchemy. So going to that little forge is not nearly as nasty as leveling up to 60 in alchemy.
No.
It's and we thought that we were just learning that maybe some of them are too much of a pain in the ass to get to. So you are kind of right. Like we were learning at the time, this really isn't kind of a lot of fun if it's that hard to actually level it, because we also don't know how populated. We didn't know that once we didn't know how fallow a lot of these dungeons were going to be. Like if the wave of people passes it, we didn't know like what the dungeon finder system was going to be like. I mean, we went through a few dungeon finder systems, and so we didn't know how hard or inaccessible some of them were going to be while we were building them.
We had a good one. Just a trade channel.
Yeah, exactly. John, if I can just ask you as we wind this one up, just about sort of, the towards the final area of the instance, when we get towards, what they call the Iron Hall and the Imperial Seat, the room that's got the massive statues lined up on both sides, and then you get into the throne room, as we've referred to. Right. Anything that you can remember in particular in putting those areas together?
That was, again, all center axis, all very symmetrical. I thought it was very cheap way of building geometry. Genuinely, statues were just, I was out of ideas, and I knew we hadn't done a gauntlet of statues. I didn't know if they would come to life. I didn't know if they were going to spawn more statues. This was really, frankly, the last 3 rooms I think are still very uninspiring as far as architecture goes. So I don't know. It's, yeah, not a lot of thought was put into it, I'm afraid.
No, all good, all good. Vilius and Gromboli, I'll get you to think of your final questions about the design of BRD. And John, I'll just ask you this while the guys are thinking of that and we get on the home turn on this particular call. If you could go back in time, and every time I ask Kevin Jordan this question, he would mention that obviously WoW turned out so well that he wouldn't change anything. But if I really pressed you and said, if I made you pick, something that you could change about your design choices in BRD or anything about BRD, what would you go back and tap a younger John Staats on the shoulder and say, "Psst, hey buddy, don't do that, do this"?
Oh, I would definitely, I would cut out the last 3. I would cut out the Lyceum. I would cut out the even the Summoner's Tomb basically, it's okay. The Summoner's Tomb I stole from Blackrock Spire, Upper Blackrock Spire. It's the exact same thing. It's a I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 tomb room. I kept this number 7 going around. I was just out of ideas. I liked the Pour Your Own Golem Mold Foundry room, but I kind of wish we had finished the dungeon on Chamber of Enchantment, that big epic overlook where we were fighting Ambassador Flamelash. But, the Lyceum's also kind of, you either love it or you hate it. A lot of people liked it, so that's what I would change.
Fair enough. All right, Vilius, I'll ask you to get your final question to John about BRD.
So talking about the Forge again, I thought BRD was interesting because it sort of stayed relevant into the first tier of rating because, like Gromboli said, you had to go back there to craft dark iron gear, and in way back you had to actually go through there to get to Molten Core before they had the shortcut. So it seems like other dungeons, that's not the case. They're more about getting the gear and getting the pre-raid gear. So was that kind of a conscious decision to keep it relevant so that people could see that masterpiece and not just pass it by?
No, you know what? It was just it's just proximity. It's proximity to the Molten Core. We had no idea that, I think was it Kargath was the Horde side where you would respawn in Kargath. That was where you would bind your Hearthstone. We had no idea that was going to. I mean, look at the amount of time we spent on Kargath. It was nothing. They placed an orc tower and they moved on. That was the amount of planning.
Right.
I mean, that's where everybody spent probably years of the game in Kargath, at least on the Horde side. That's where you respawned. So, we didn't know. And as far as other dungeons not getting the same amount of attention, we did know to some extent that players would be in the lower continent or at least in Azeroth during the end game of World of Warcraft, and we knew that other areas were going to be emptier and less traveled at different levels. That's fine, and we were fine with that. But we were just learning. It wasn't something planned.
All right, Gromboli, your last question.
Well, I've been thinking all the time about a question to shoot, but I really can't come up, so will end it with saying that thank you for designing such an amazing dungeon that I really spent nights in together with a lot of friends. It was, and still I'm looking forward when Lethal Classic hits the streets to go back again and experience it again,
Sure.
It's just, it was amazing. And also you can really see the style compared to lower Blackrock Spire, upper Blackrock Spire, and the entire Blackrock Mountain. The design of the entire environment there, amazing. Goosebumps over my arms when I think about it. The dwarves holding the chains for the middle section. Amazing.
It takes a lot of, well, first of all, it takes a lot of teamwork. I mean, Brian Morse wrote painting the textures for Blackrock Depths, or all the Blackrock dungeons. It's basically all the same texture set. Having that many textures really lets you go crazy. And having that many different monsters, like if there was just only a couple of monsters, it wouldn't have the same flavor. But there's a lot of work on the character team, the environment guys. We just pulled all kinds of assets from all over the game to put that together. So it's kind of like a team effort. It's not,
the team did a great job.
I didn't script anything either, so yeah. Oh, the game designers, well, they'll get some credit, shall we? Let's give them a little. So that's where the rubber meets the pavement, anyway.
All right. Well, look, John, I'll let you go on this one, but just before you go, we'll remind everyone, guys, this is just the first segment of many to come on the Dungeons of World of Warcraft Classic. So, Vanilla World of Warcraft. So if you enjoyed this one, thankfully John has said he's up for many more like this, and I can't thank him enough, but John will give you another chance. Obviously, the WoW Diary available now on Amazon or on the book's website. John, plug away. Where can people find you and what can they find?
Well, what they can find is my book. This is a book that not a lot of books are like this. It's fairly unique. It is a fly on the wall look at game development. There's not a lot of, in fact, there's no filter on it other than what I think is appropriate to talk about as far as developing a big game like this. So you do get to hear the backroom conversations of what we thought of competing products, companies, the management, each other, a lot of little fights and squabbles and arguments and debates. And I think you'd like it for knowing how imperfect the process really is. So you can check it out on Amazon or thewowdiary.com. It's not available in ebook or PDF yet. It'll be probably later in June. So
no worries. Absolutely. And again, I'll recommend everyone go and do yourself a favor and pick up a copy of that book. I have it. I have read it. I love it. It has my full endorsement. And John, we'll see you next time on the show.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me, guys. Nice talking to you.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Hi everyone, Josh here. I just want to take a quick moment to remind you that while Countdown to Classic will always be a podcast you can get for free, if you do happen to really enjoy the show and find yourself always coming back for more, then please do check out the show's Patreon page to see how you can help keep the lights on at Countdown to Classic and even vote on show content as the show continues to bring you more and more classic WoW goodness. Alternatively, if monthly subscriptions aren't your thing, you can always visit the show's tip jar over at Ko-Fi, with that link being in the show notes and on the website too. Now, let's get back to the show. Okay, it's time for another Countdown to Classic call, and I'm so very happy to be joined today by someone who many of you will actually probably be familiar with, but you may not have thought of this story for quite some time, given that it happened many years ago. And I want to say a big Countdown to Classic welcome to Colleen Madigan. How are you?
I'm great, Josh. Thanks for having me on the show.
It's my absolute pleasure, and I'm so glad that you were so up for this call, and you've been so easy to deal with in terms of organizing this conversation today. And for those of you who aren't aware, I'll give you a very, very brief insight into who Colleen is, and obviously we'll get Colleen to explain a little bit further. But about, I think it was about 7 years ago, and Colleen, you can obviously help define the time period a bit better when we throw to you, but there was a bit of a a news item, a tiff, if you will, about the time that WoW and politics somewhat got mixed together. And many of you will be asking, well, how could that possibly happen? Well, Colleen was involved in a race for a state Senate seat in the state of Maine, I believe. And the opposite party, Colleen being a Democrat and the opposite party being the Republicans, obviously wanted to say a few things about their opposing candidate. And one of the things that came up was Colleen's interactions with World of Warcraft. Now, I know this sounds like it's going to be a political chat, everyone. Please don't stress. We're not going to be getting into sort of the minutiae of politics or anything. We're not here to slam any political parties or anything, but just simply state the facts of what actually happened and the relatively funny story that it turned into, or not so funny for Colleen for a time, but, what came out of the conversation about it all. But Colleen, I'll turn to you and say, tell us a little bit about the background, just before we get into what was said, about you and your political aspirations and how this all came about with you wanting to get involved in the state Senate.
Well, I'm a social worker and a gamer. I play World of Warcraft, and I didn't think the two were connected at all when I decided to run for a state Senate seat in my district in Maine in the United States. And one day I was driving to a meeting and I got a call from the organizer who worked to help get me elected. And she said, Colleen, the Maine Republican Party just launched a website and, attack mailers and, press releases attacking you for playing World of Warcraft. And I actually thought she was punking me because I thought that was the most ridiculous thing I'd ever heard. I thought, who cares that I play World of Warcraft? No one asked me about being a knitter or anything else, And but then I went into this meeting and my phone started blowing up with all these calls, from strange area codes, just some of them international. And when I got out of the meeting, I saw that there was a number of news places that were calling me about, my World of Warcraft gaming and what I said in World of Warcraft. And I was like, oh my God, really? Someone would attack me for playing World of Warcraft? I just thought it was ridiculous.
Now, up to that point, what was your World of Warcraft history like? How long had you been playing the game? What were you playing? What were you doing in game?
I had been playing for a number of years. I was in a pretty big guild. I was friendly with everyone in my guild. I had a great experience playing it, like many people playing World of Warcraft. At that point, when I was running for the state Senate, when that attack was launched, I wasn't playing a lot because I was busy working a full-time job and running for office. So I thought it was really weird considering I hadn't really been a top raider in my guild for, at least a year by that point. Although I had a really good raiding career before that. Back in the Lich King days, I was one of the top rogues on my server,
Right.
Yeah, so I wasn't playing that much at the time at all, which was the other thing that struck me as very weird.
So obviously these comments came up about you and your, alternate life, as it was termed. And we can sort of look back now and I'm so glad that you can have a bit of a laugh about it now. But as you say, the news, that the press were kicking down your door wanting to talk to you about what the other party was saying about you and your gaming habits. And it opened up a really big conversation about sort of gamers in general and, who obviously plays video games and people from all walks of life. We'll get a bit more into that later on, but more specifically, I think it was, a number of things were said that were not related to your World of Warcraft gaming as well. But, in terms of WoW, they were basically inferring that, look at the violent alternate life that this person leads. Could you possibly trust someone to represent you who perhaps, dreams of pools of blood being shed from their opponents and whatnot? Can you talk a bit more about the specific comments that were made?
The first kind of attack mailer that was sent, what happened was that day after I got out of that meeting, I actually went down to the political party office kind of that was nearest to my house to see it. And, there was a number of people who were like, oh my God, you said these things, and the mailer was actually quite funny. I mean, I wish, I know I have a copy of it somewhere, but it was quoting me talking about DPS, and they misquoted it and said it stood for deaths per second. And I just started laughing. At that time, I had spec'd my rogue using Elitist Jerks, which, was the top kind of site for, how to spec your rogue. And I'm like, hey, geeks are going to see this and they're going to know that, like, I know what I'm talking about here. Like, I don't see this as an attack. I see this as really funny, and I'm like, so many normal people play this game or other video games. Like, I don't see what the big deal is.
Now, when the news broke, did you hear anything from your guildies about all of this? Were people who you play the game with getting in touch going, what is going on?
Oh yeah, my guildies were just outraged. Just outraged. I mean, because we had been playing for years, and we I think I'm not any different from a lot of World of Warcraft players that the guildies that live in my area, we get together. I know some of them personally. We're friends, and we made friends in the game and outside of the game, and so they were really just outraged. And I just remember getting texts and messages about them talking about it on different Reddit threads or different sites, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm trying to work and field press calls at this point. Like, guys, have your fun. Like it was just sort of, it was a really surreal experience.
Now, before the your race in obviously voting and everything was done, you mentioned to me also that, is it the case that despite the fact that this attack, if you will, came from the Republican Party, you said that, to be fair, you also were reached out to by other members of the Republican Party and your own party saying, this is all a bit silly, isn't it?
Yeah, actually, my opponent, who I beat that year, actually, I talked with him, and, it wasn't something he had done personally. It was the party at large, and he apologized for it, and I had no problem with him at all. I had, voicemails and emails from just, I don't know, probably thousands of people, because it was just that overwhelming. And there's this one, I'm going to imitate it because I saved this voicemail for a really long time. So it was this guy, and his name was like Miss Lahovich, because I had a different name back then. My name is Frederick Kingsbury, and I'm from Beaumont, Texas, and I'm in the Republican Party, but I gotta say, what the Maine Republican Party is doing to you is wrong. It's just plain wrong, girl. Ain't nothing wrong playing World of Warcraft. You go, girl, and howdy from Beaumont, Texas. Like, Frederick Kingsbury, if you listen to this podcast, thank you. I love you.
Oh, there you go. Well, I'm glad that sort of, regardless of political affiliation, saner minds were prevailing in saying, this is all a bit ridiculous, and people could have a laugh at it and just say that perhaps people should be focusing on the more poignant issues in a political race. But you already alluded to it, but we'll say it now. As a result of this news, you wound up winning the race. Did you find that it rallied gamers to your cause and got you some extra votes that you may not have gotten without the news?
I think so. I mean, it was a huge issue here in the district. And the story was covered by CNN, BBC. Stephen Colbert even did a piece on it back on his show. And I don't know how you guys do it in Australia and other places, but in America, here, particularly in the state of Maine, like when you're running for like a state legislative seat, we actually knock on doors of the people of, that are potential voters and talk with them and see what their concerns are and ask for their vote. So while this all was going on, I would be, going to work every day and knocking on doors. And it got to be the point where people were like, oh my God, it's her at the door, And so if they were gamers, like the entire family would come out and, ask for a yard sign or a button, And I think in the long run, it helped me, because I think people realize that attacking someone for just a hobby that they have, a hobby that, literally millions of other people have, is just dumb.
And I absolutely am very, very keen to get into that part of the conversation now. Just before I get there, I just want to figure out, after you, obviously congratulations on winning the race. And I think it's fantastic that sort of, it turned out that way. What was your title after you won the race? That's what I'm a bit confused about. I'm not sure of how the politics works over there. What were you at that point?
At the time this happened in 2012. And so in 2012, I became a state senator for, in the state Senate in the state of Maine. And Maine has a bicameral legislature sort of set up just like the U.S. Congress. They have a House of Representatives and a state Senate. And so I had a 2-year term in the state Senate. When I ran for re-election in 2014, I was beat, but I ran in 2016 for a House of Representatives seat in my district. And I'm now serving my second term. So I won re-election in 20.
And that's what I was a bit confused about. So, I mean, in terms of like, is the title senator?
Right now I'm a representative.
Okay, representative. Very good.
I guess. Yeah. So.
Oh, fantastic! I absolutely. Congratulations on all of your success. That's so great that you're still in the game, obviously, and it sounds like you're still very much so enjoying yourself. But I want to turn now to, setting that platform and now knowing that you are still actively involved in politics. You've got building quite the political career behind you now. Is it a surprise looking back in reflection at the odd sort of, shitstorm, if you will, that blew up over that news piece when we talk about, the kinds of people that get involved in video games? And I constantly stress to people in my everyday life, people get surprised that I play games a little bit. And I'm like, why? And, I'm a criminal trial attorney, by trade. I do a very sort of, I don't know whether you call it unique job, if you will, but it's a job. Mm-hmm. And talking to people around work that, video games don't come up necessarily very often. And when they do come up, I say, hey, I play video games incessantly and I have a World of Warcraft classic podcast and I love MMORPGs. They go look at me and go, we might be out for drinks or something. And they're like, are you serious? I never would have picked you for the type. And I'm like, what is the type? This is people from all walks of life enjoying this hobby. So I'd ask you, Colleen, do you find that it really illuminated a bit of necessary light on the fact that it doesn't matter where you come from or what you do? Gaming unites everyone, and it can be everyone that does it?
I think that's absolutely true. I mean, in my guild, which we've had our guild since I think 2008 or 9. There's people who are college students. One of our, I think our guild leader is, she's been an anthropology professor and a mom. There's retired lawyers. There's people who worked in political administrations. It's just everyone. There's people who are waitresses. There are people who are disabled. Some people's kids are in it. Like, if they do come from all walks of life, you can't really make any assumption about someone just because they play a video game. I always used to say, like, I don't really watch TV. I play video games. I don't see what the big deal is.
And that's something I've always brought it back to as well. And we were gasbagging a little bit off call about, kind of some of the things that we've heard when it comes up in conversation. But I've always reflected it back at other people saying, well, what hobbies do you engage with? Like you say, do you watch a lot of TV? Do you watch a lot of movies? Do you go rock climbing or whatever? And they're like, yeah, I do this, that, and the other. And I'm like, so what is the difference between me selecting something different to invest my time in? I often say to people, do you read books? And they'll go, oh, I love books. I read them for hours. And I go, great. Guess what? We're not that dissimilar. It's just got a certain stigma to it, obviously, but a lot of stats came out as a result of this story with you. And I think one of the more interesting things was also the ages, obviously, that we forget about of the people that play video games, the demographics behind it all. And one of the more startling things that I was looking at in research for this chat with you, and these were, 7-year-old stats. They're obviously probably vastly different now. If anything, they've gone up. But the number of people not only over 35, but over 50 as well that are still actively engaged in video games.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's very true. Like, you can't make assumptions about it at all. And I think particularly in a game, like RPG games, particularly like World of Warcraft, where there's just so many things you can do in the game, right? I mean, yes, I raided for a long time and really would work my dailies and, work to, fully spec and outfit my character. But there were other times that what I like to do was hunt rare pets so I could give them to guildies as gifts, like for their birthday or when their kid joined the guild, I'd send them an emerald wolf. Like I would do stuff like that. There's so many things you can do in the game. Like World of Warcraft, that many people do different things, with the game, and they play it the way they enjoy it, and that's great.
It's definitely a game that invites a certain type of personality, and everyone that I've bumped into through the show, and in real life as well, involved with World of Warcraft, have been really exceptional people. And I've loved all the interactions that I've had. But I'd ask you, again, we were joking around off the call, and I was sort of saying to you that, recently I was single for the longest time. I loved being a single man, but I obviously love being in a relationship now. But the difference between the two in terms of, I'm dating a gamer now, and I love that lifestyle, someone who understands what it's all about, and there's no issues whatsoever. But when I was single, you talk to girls and they'd be like, what, you play video games and you're over 30 years old? That's kind of weird. But I'd ask you, do you bump into anyone in the political game on a daily basis that if it ever comes up, they give you a bit of a sideways glance still?
Every once in a while people bring it up. Initially when it first happened, one of the things I found most hilarious was when I was first kind of sworn in as a state senator, it seemed like everyone felt the need to confess their video game usage to me. People would be like, well, I play Halo or Candy Crush Saga, or,
Yeah.
But I was just like, it's really funny. I've become people's video game confessor. But I think one of the things, I think that's come out of it, even to this day, is that, girl gamers come up to me in the State House, back then and still now, and they'll just be like, thanks. Because I think if you're a woman and you play, like, that's even considered even weirder, right? Like, you must be just some weird nerd girl that no one knows what to do with. And hey, I'll confess to being a nerd, but like, I like lots of things, and this just happens to be one of them. And I think people just, I don't know, come up and tell me about it, and they'll be like, I think that's really cool that you stood up and, and said, so what if I do this? Well, I'm like, well, the fact is everyone should. Like, when someone makes fun of something you're passionate about, right? Whether it's, reading, or whether it's, a particular TV show or video game, don't let people make fun of the things you love, that you love to do.
It's so interesting that you bring that up. I feel like a fool now for not even considering that angle, that, obviously as a girl, as a female gamer, the kind of light that you shed on sort of bringing a bit more representation and publicity to the fact that, hey guys, it's really obvious girls play games too. Like, it's out there, we know it, but giving a sort of a face and a name to that as well was very, very important. Have you found that, and you said obviously some people have already gotten in contact with you and sort of said thank you for your involvement with that, but in general, I really do find it odd that in 2019, and you might sort of guffaw at my ignorance on this issue, but I find it odd that in 2019, girl gamers still have a little bit of a stigma. They're still trying to prove to people like, hey, we're regular gamers like you. I find it so bizarre. Like, why is this a thing? Why are we even talking about it? Of course they are. Everyone's, do you know where I'm coming from?
I do. And I think, you should be us for a day sometimes. That's unfortunately, that's the way of the world, right? I mean, there's some people that, sadly still think women can't do some things guys do. And this is like completely silly. This is just video gaming, right? I mean, I'm completely capable of mashing buttons just like anyone else. And so are other women like me. So, and we like to do it, right? We can role play games, and we can raid, and we can hunt rare pets, or we can, have fun, completing a quest line just like anyone else. Absolutely. It's a fun thing to do.
Absolutely. It's I mean, I had my girlfriend, it's still, and this is another thing that I was sort of just a little bit surprised by. Like, I had my girlfriend join, she plays a Final Fantasy 14 a lot, and she joined a guild the other day. She'd sort of flown solo for a long time, finally found a guild, that she joined up with. And when she basically told them that she was a girl, she doesn't attach any big deal to that. They didn't lose their minds, but there's a reaction to it like, whoa, we had no idea. Like, oh my God, man. It's like, why is it noteworthy?
That's actually very true. I mean, my experience initially in World of Warcraft was like that. And then, the people that then formed the guild that I'm in, the Reckless, it was formed just sort of like-minded people politically. I mean, but it's about playing the game, not about politics. But it was so refreshing to be in a guild where it wasn't a big deal, and that was certainly one of the things that that made me stick with that guild. Now, oh gosh, like 10 years later, I'm still in this guild because it's a place that feels comfortable. No one ever questions that. It's probably there's a ton of women in the guild. And so it's never an issue, it's never an issue getting a rating spot if people want it. It's never an issue people thinking, like it's weird if your girl does it. So I think it helps to find a place that feels really comfortable and safe too.
Now, Colleen, you lightly touched on it earlier, and you said that some, people in politics come up to you at work or on a day-to-day basis and will maybe under their breath say, give you the secret handshake and say, I play a certain game too. What I was going to say is, do you come across that more often than you thought? What would you say about that relationship between politics and gaming, if anything? Would people be surprised at the amount of representatives that might dabble in their favorite hobby? And do you know of anyone that people would definitely know the name of in the political world that is a gamer that you have met or know of?
Well, there was a member of the Obama administration in my guild. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Are they still involved in politics?
I believe that this person's still in the guild. Yeah. I mean, I haven't played much for a while just because we're in legislative session right now. Right.
I'm not sure are you at liberty to say what role they had in the administration, or do you want to keep that one a bit private?
Yeah, I'll just keep that one private.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine. I figured that was the case. That's all good. Any other names that or funny things like that you bumped into along the years?
A lot of the funny thing is, I mean, that's certainly like an interesting fact that I just shared that, but, most of the people in my guild or that I've played with are just regular, normal people, just like anyone else.
Yeah.
And, when I talk to people, whether they're other, senators or representatives in the state of Maine, or they're people's doors that I knock on and, talk to them about issues and ask for the vote, they're gamers. They're just regular people too. I stand by the thing I still thought 7 years ago, that I really don't see what the big deal is. It's just a hobby that I like to spend my time doing. And so do a lot of other people, more so than you think.
Now, I thought I'd have a little bit of fun just while we round out this call, Colleen, and we'll take the home turn now. And you've been so fantastic. I'm not sure how you are. I mean, I'm only assuming you have a vested interest in political history and whatnot, obviously given what you do, but I thought I'd throw a few names at you. And if we pluck out about a handful of names, prominent names from, US politics, and I'd like to ask you what you would think if they played World of Warcraft, what class and spec what race, class and spec they might play.
Oh, that would be funny. Well, I have to say for the Horde, okay? Like, I'm a Horde, but...
Okay, all right. Very good, very good. If I were to say someone like...
Orc Rogue is my main, so...
Sorry, say that Orc Rogue was your main?
Yes.
Okay.
Santiago.
Very good. What spec did you mainly roll with?
Assassination.
Okay, very good, very good. All right. Well, you were an Orc Assassination Rogue. I'll throw a few names at you, and we'll get you to spit out what you think they might have gravitated towards. So I'll start with this one.
Hilarious.
I'll start with this one. Bill Clinton.
Bill Clinton. Oh, Bill Clinton. Let's see. Well, I think he'd be Alliance, and I think he would be a Paladin.
All right. Let's go with, how about Barack Obama?
Barack Obama. Oh, that's a good one. So I'm going to call him Horde. Okay.
Yeah.
And let's see. Barack Obama is. I'm also going to call him a Paladin. Do you want him to be a Blood Elf? All right, he's fine. He's a Blood Elf Paladin.
Fair enough. A Blood Elf Paladin. Okay, very good. I don't know. Something about I could see him like a little bit roguish. I don't know. Like I don't know why I say that, but I could.
I am partial to rogue, so.
Yes. Okay, how about this one? Well, let's go with Condoleezza Rice.
Condoleezza Rice. She's really smart. I'm going to call her Horde. And I'm going to call, let's see. I think she is a Tauren druid.
Yeah, okay. I like that. I like where your head's at with that one. All right, we'll go. Let's say Hillary. Where do we go with Hillary?
Hillary, I'm going to call her Horde as well.
Ooh.
And her. I don't know. Her and Bill maybe have a mixed marriage there. Horde is one.
Do you think she's hunting him down? Do you think she's hunting him down in World PvP?
I don't know. Maybe she'd be a hunter then. Maybe she should be a hunter.
Very good. Colleen, it's been an absolute delight talking to you. I can't tell you how much fun I've had just sort of shooting off the cuff with you here. And I can't thank you enough for coming on the show. As I said, I came out of nowhere. I was like, hey, I'm this Australian guy. I do this podcast. And you were so great to say yes to this. And the listeners and I can't thank you enough.
Oh, I thank you for having me on. This was actually fun. This was a lot of fun. I thought this is something I haven't done. So yeah, I just wanted to give a shout out to my cat, Leroy Jenkins, who I also got after I got attacked. I happened to get a kitten right after the election that year. So I said, I got to name this cat Leroy Jenkins.
I love it. I'll have to run a competition with the listeners for who's got the best WoW-related pet name. So Leroy Jenkins for your cat is right up there in the number one spot already, I can tell you.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Colleen, and we'll speak to you later on.
All right, thanks. Bye-bye.
All right, it's time for another countdown to Classic Call, and this is an important one, a follow-up from a call last week on the show that ruffled a few feathers. Now, it is a controversial topic. Everyone's still talking about this dueling tournament and the actions of Trollgodx and what Blizzard may or may not do in the future with this kind of behavior when we see it in the official launch of the game, if we see it. I know this was a bit of a one-off with the beta, and we'll never see anything quite like this again because level 30 cap, blah, 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 blah. But simply covering some what-ifs, what may-bes, and what have you. We've got 3 people on the line, and I will go through them all. And we are talking to Emmortal. How are you, mate? First time on the show.
I'm good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Thanks for being here, mate. And Sabara, second timer.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you back, mate. And another returnee. It's so great to see people coming back on the show and wanting more. Trabadab.
Hi, happy to be here.
Thanks for being here, guys. And now, look, Sabara, I think I'm going to start with you and tell me why you feel that perhaps Blizzard should consider a banning in this particular circumstance.
So I'm just going to say I don't know about ban totally, but I would be all about, 24-hour, 3 days suspension. Mm-hmm. And the real reason for why it is I have no problem with any kind of PvP griefing you can imagine. You want a corpse camp, you want to kill lobies, you want to take over towns. That's all part of gameplay. You get on a PvP server, you sign up for that. But as the player being griefed, camped, whatever, you have a pretty clear recourse, which is to call for help. It generates good gameplay. Everybody has fun out of it. Something like this, where you are griefing your own faction, they have a much smaller capability to deal with you, to get rid of you. And especially in this case, I can't even make a fun gameplay argument out of what is essentially just ruining it for other people.
Now, you're great to bring up the other options, and I got myself in trouble last week, and I'll fall on my sword. I fucked up last week and didn't say some things that I should have said, because as you've raised, as people are raising in chat now, and as people raised as feedback from last week, Josh, there are other options. Why are we just talking about bans? As you've said, there's temporary suspensions, and then there's also what actually happened. There's the GMs just transporting that person to another area. So let's discuss those other options. And, again, I'll sort of slap myself on the wrist and say, Josh, stop going to sort of one extreme. The only reason I sort of talked about that last week is that seemed to be what people were talking about on the forums, is just focusing on should we or should we not ban. But yes, let's talk about those other options. And Trabadab, I'll turn to you and say, what would be your recommendations on some of the actions that could be taken? Because you seem to be of the viewpoint that definitely some action should be taken. Maybe it's just a matter of what it is.
Yeah, I think that definitely something should have happened. I think what they did, just teleporting the player to another zone, is definitely a good option. Just sending a message to the player saying, hey, you need to stop. You're ruining fun for other people. It's not cool. Cut it out. And I think that maybe even a 24-hour suspension up to like 1 or 2 days would also be a clear, like, hey, we're not kicking you out of the beta, but this is not cool. Don't do it again. If you do it again in upcoming tournaments, maybe something more should be taken after that. But it really is just like he's being a jerk for hours, doing something like a slap on the wrist saying, hey, not cool. I think that's appropriate.
Okay, Emmortal, I'll turn to you. And there's another option that's come up, is that perhaps we're talking about, revocation of beta access, because again, unique circumstances. This is the only time we're ever going to be involved in World of Warcraft Classic Beta. This is something that perhaps Blizzard should have considered or not considered. What do you think in terms of this person playing beta ongoing after this event?
I would probably side with they should lose their beta access obviously they griefed the players, they disrupted the dueling tournament. But I can play both sides of that, where they obviously got into beta for a specific reason. Whether it was to troll streamers or not, who knows? But I'm not one to say that they should be banned, but perhaps temporary suspension like the other Sabara and Trabadab have said. That's just kind of my opinion on it. And like I said, I can see both sides of the coin.
Well, Emmortal, I'll stick with you just because you mentioned to me in approaching me about this call that you had a particular story that this whole event reminded you of. What was that?
Yeah, so I've been playing World of Warcraft since 2005, and we actually had a very similar instance in the Burning Crusade where we basically were doing a tournament with our own guild, and we had some players of both sides do the same thing that this guy did. He would block things or just annoy us or disrupt the duel, or specifically target the dueler to disrupt the play. And it made it annoying, and it was a loss of fun at the end of it, but there's nothing we could have done at the time.
It's something now where if we take that into account, and I'll sort of leave this one open to the first one in here, but it seems to be the case that all of you agree that absolutely something should be done, and it's just a question of what. And that was sort of the subject of the call last week as well, in terms of interpreting the TOS. And we talked about how vague it's left on purpose by Blizzard so they can somewhat pick and choose what they deem to be a moment where they can intervene. So are we all in agreement? Does anyone want to pick up on the ball and run with it in terms of absolutely something should be done? And did anyone hear anything last week from because some of the callers last week obviously said nothing should be done in these circumstances. Does anyone want to hit back at that?
Yeah, sure. I'd love to chime in on. So if you actually look at the terms and conditions, I think that was mentioned, or terms of service, it was mentioned last week, by quoting them saying, well, there's nothing really in there. But if you go further to an in-game forum conduct policy for grouping other players, there's a line that says our games allow players to interact in a variety of ways, not all of them constructive. You may encounter players that steal resource nodes, lead monsters to new areas, or block access to NPCs or other in-game objects. And the post goes on, but it was made by Blizzard, and sadly the main post is no longer there, but I was able to dig through the forums and find. So they're breaking the terms and conditions, so some action should be taken. Now ban, I'm not so sure. but definitely moving them out of the zone or maybe suspending them for 24 hours to 48 hours definitely could be warranted.
Do you guys pretty much agree with that? Does anyone have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I haven't read through all of that, but one of the things that kind of came up a fair amount in the other call was just this idea that, you're never going to get rid of all of the assholes. And I completely agree with that. But also, if you don't do anything when people are being kind of shitheads, you're going to have more people behaving that way, and that's going to negatively affect everyone. So, I'm not interested in huge ban waves or anything, but the occasional slap on the wrist to kind of keep everyone on the straight and narrow seems like it would benefit everyone.
And I think realistically, if you play WoW today and you put in a ticket, it's going to be a while before a GM actually gets to you. So if someone's bothering you enough to warrant you reporting them or writing a ticket for them, and then they're bothering you long enough, an hour and a half, 2 hours, for a GM to actually show up, then yeah, probably something should be taken. If they are taking hours out of their day, hours out of your day, out of your play experience, that's not fun. And it really, the people handling, the GMs doing this is their job. Their job is to see from a third party what is acceptable. They look at lots of different occasions. And I got the sense from the previous call that people were, who said no action should be taken, were a little bit afraid of possibly, I don't know, maybe being banned or punished for something small, like ganking a lobby or something. I don't think that's ever going to be the case. I really think it's just the constant harassment when you just digging and digging and digging. They moved the tournament and the guy followed and kept, and that's where the problem came from.
And I won't show. Oh, sorry, go for it, mate.
Yeah, I'd love to chime in on that point that you just made, that people might be afraid that the little things that they do might get them banned. Well, another post on me doing my homework a little bit, Blizzard made a couple years ago, I think it was back in 2015. It says Blizzard considers most conduct to be part of the game and not harassment. So player killing the enemies of your race and or alliance, including gravestones and or corpse camping, is considered to be part of the game. So you can't be banned for something like that. It doesn't matter if you do it for a minute or hours, because I know back when I played in 05, I camped guys for hours just for killing me, just to get the message across, hey, don't mess with me. I never got banned. So I don't think that's something they should be worried about. But this kind of stuff, different. It's different. You should definitely have something happen to them.
Well, I'm so glad you raised that point, because one of the things that I've been wrestling with is, again, and me doing what I do for a living, it really does seem to be able to be quite open to interpretation and argument. And even some of the things that Blizzard have said in the past do seem to somewhat contradict each other. But as you've just said, in terms of, if it's player versus player, then kind of everything's on the table. Well, one thing that I had been thinking and getting a vibe of from all the comments in the forums and whatnot about this particular circumstance was that, the actions in and of themselves, yeah, it's annoying, but whatever. But it's the time that they spent doing it. It seems like time became an aggravating factor in terms of, look, if they'd done this for 5 minutes, nobody would have given a shit. Maybe some of the people who were so outraged would have had a bit of a laugh. But the fact that they were so intent on doing it for hours, that crossed the line. And then we come back to, what you just said, PvP griefing, just PvP corpse camping and things like that. And again, it seems to be that even corpse camping, even though Blizzard has explicitly said corpse camping is fine, there's also that stuff in the EULA that, that I read last week that basically says, if you are interfering with someone's enjoyment of the game or their experience, then, perhaps action is on the table. So if you were to corpse camp someone for, 24 hours. Let's go nuts with a really extreme example. Well, let's dial it back. But you've already given the example that you did it for hours and no one touched you. That's part of the game. And it's like, well, if you corpse camp someone for 12 hours and they literally could not move and they were silly enough not to log off and go on to another toon, they were, devoted. Let's say they've got only one toon. This is who I play. This is my game. This is what I do. And you won't let them play the game due to corpse camping. And you do the, but Blizzard has said corpse camping is fine. But then the other camp says, but you're interfering with their enjoyment of the game. Where do we go with it?
For me, anything PvP related simply comes down to the player has more options to deal with it. If you're getting corpse camped, you call your guild, you call out for help, and people can come and help you. In this case of somebody disrupting a tournament, you can't really call out to the other faction to show up and kill somebody. If you're Horde and some Tauren is blocking your screen and ruining your fun, you can't call out to your alliance buddies and have them come kill this Tauren guy and guard your tournament for you. It's for me, it comes down to what the player has options to do within game. And when your within game options become so limited, that's when I say it's time for Blizzard to step in and sort of do corrective action.
So one point that I would like to make is they could have had this tournament in Gurabashi Arena and you would have been able to kill that guy regardless of faction. That would have solved a lot of it, and somebody would have been able to just, as soon as he popped up, dead, and just kept that, and eventually he's going to get frustrated himself. So that's one option. Another option is obviously streamers put this together. They get stream sniped on almost any game they play. Don't publicly advertise, hey, we're going to have a dueling tournament, and this is where it is at what time. I know that's how they get content and all that, but if you're playing for real world money, what's better, having somebody that's going to stream snipe and interfere possibly, or recording it and then posting it later?
Well, I'll just ask, just to push you a little bit on that one, because I raised an eyebrow as well, but just the notion I hadn't heard before, but I was sort of wondering, I wonder how that would work. But people now in chat, obviously, Galania in chat and Real Relix in chat saying that Gurubashi might actually be a bit of an issue. It might create more problems than it solves. Tell me why you think Gurubashi would be fine as opposed to, and having it, well, I guess part of the reason they did it is to keep it away from contested zones. Then you got Gurubashi sitting there in a contested zone for one thing, but also just, I don't know, the madness that could have ensued there. Tell me a bit more about that Gurubashi idea.
Sure. So, I was one of the hundreds of thousands of people that watched the stream and the dueling tournament, and there were alliance that were sitting there that wanted to watch it, but they were afraid they were going to die because it was a horde run event. And I think putting in Gurubashi would solve the problem of this guy basically trolling the whole event. And yeah, there's a chance that you could have Alliance and Horde break out and kill each other, but most of the guys are people that were there to watch it. They weren't there to interfere. So
you think an armistice would have taken place for the point of viewing the tournament?
Yeah, we're all here to play a game. Most of the people that were there were being respectful and just wanted to watch and see the outcome.
Okay, fair enough. Now, guys, having heard that, a great point that was brought up just then by Galania again was just saying that, talking about time's a great reason why the TOS should be vague and open-ended, because Blizz needs to be able to look at each situation as a separate event. It's the exact reason why we try to have open-ended behavior management plans in schools, because all situations aren't identical. And that's a really good point, Galania. I'd open that up to you guys in terms of just the TOS and the EULA and everything. Like, we talked last week again about the vague nature of it. And is it just the case that, look, because some people are calling out for these terms to get a bit more specific so everyone knows exactly what is and what is not an infraction. But do you think that that's a problem or not? Do you think they're fine as they are, or that perhaps more specificity should come into play?
I don't see a reason to make it more specific, because I think a lot of people seem to have this fear that, oh, I'm going to be doing something, and then my account is going to be banned and I'm going to lose all these months of play. Like, Blizzard is not just going to throw out a ban to you and you're going to lose your account. If you're doing something and you're doing it long enough and it goes against TOS, you're going to get a message about it. They're going to give you a slap on the wrist. They're going to teleport you to Winter Spring. They're going to give you a 2-day suspension. And then what you were doing wrong because you can talk to the GMs. We see it in Blizzard games all over the place. Anybody who's played Overwatch or Heroes of the Storm, like, you don't just get banned for days. You get a silence, and then you get a longer silence, and then you get a suspension, and then a longer suspension. So, I mean, they're vague so that they can look at each individual case as it happens, but they're also not going to just out of nowhere hit you with a ban hammer. You're going to get a reason why you're getting a slap on the wrist, and then you just correct your actions.
Yeah, I agree that it really, I mean, you're the customer, right? You're paying for this. They don't want to just throw away people who are potentially giving hundreds of dollars. Someone who spends thousands of hours on WoW could, and oftentimes, if they're anything like me, spend lots of money on other games on Blizzard as well. If they just outright ban things for no reason, it would be a problem. The only time that really does, because it does happen sometimes where it just hits you with a ban hammer, is when you're doing something you really shouldn't be doing and you're not supposed to do, like account trading, buying and selling gold, stuff that are really outside of the scope of being a troll online.
Yeah, using known exploits over and over again can get you, an out-of-nowhere ban hammer. But just sort of bothering people and being a general nuisance, that's not something you're going to get kicked out right away for.
Well, guys, let's wrap it up with this quick sort of take on how you felt at the time or how you feel now. I'll ask all of you one by one, starting with you, Emmortal. Were you watching the tournament live? Did you watch it as a VOD? How did you feel when you saw it all happening, what Trollgodx was doing? And if you were a GM and I placed that power in your hands, what would you have done?
Yeah, so I was watching live for part of it. I didn't see the troll happen per se live. I went back and watched Sodapoppin stream VOD and saw that he was doing it. And I would have done exactly what the Blizzard GM did, was just teleport him to a new zone and lock him down so he can't come in and interrupt it.
And we'll keep going down the line, guys.
I mean, truthfully, I probably would have, if I was a GM, even just told him, hey, I'm a GM, knock it off, or there's going to be, ramifications. We've gotten a bunch of complaints about what you're doing. We consider it harassment, knock it off, or we're going to take action.
I would agree with that. I think what they did was fine. I think I don't know if maybe it was not reported soon enough, or it seemed like it went on a long time. But that being said, I actually didn't watch it live. I watched VODs, I think, of Venruki and Sidu. And it didn't annoy me hugely until I watched some of the duels with Sidu where they would sit on totems and then the priest would lose the duel because they can't break the tremor. And I'm not sure where I had heard it, maybe on Reddit, maybe on a call here. I remember hearing some kind of story of a kid playing a hunter who would pool bosses from Feralis into Orgrimmar. And I believe he was contacted by a GM after trying to do it immediately after he had done it, trying to do it a second time, where the GM sent the dragon back and sent him a whisper saying, hey, you can't keep doing this. It disrupts the whole game. Take a break. And it's something that, like I said before, this is the game master's jobs to do this. And they have a lot of experience. I think if it were me, I probably unexperienced. I probably would have done like a 1-day ban. But I think that what the GM actually did is probably a very good response.
Okay. Can we get everyone's take as the final point? was a lack of action. Blizzard doing absolutely nothing. Say they had done nothing, and I know they did do something, but say they'd done nothing. Would that have been inexcusable in your eyes?
In my eyes, no. I don't think it would have been inexcusable. Again, he was annoying. He was being a troll. He was stream sniping. That comes with the territory of being a streamer and putting something online live. That you're not going to be able to stop it. Another side to it is you can make macros to target totems in PvP. I know a lot of players do it. You do it in raids as well. So there's ways around it.
I believe on the Classic, at least on C2's stream, he said that the macros don't work on the Classic beta.
Yeah, that's apparently the case.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully it's not that way in Classic.
I mean, for me, I don't think it would have been inexcusable, but that's mostly because it's the beta, and I mean, frankly, I don't care that much about streamers and people bothering streamers. I am just of the strong opinion that if you don't take care of little bits of toxicity early and often, you just open up the door to people getting worse and worse. And we're all here because WoW had this great community. And, everybody keeps talking about how vanilla is not classic. One of the major ways that is because streamers and YouTube and all of this are out there. And I mean, there are going to be people who in this day and age actively try to make a name for themselves as trolls. Like there will be YouTube channels just of trolls making streamers scream and yell and rant and rave. And if behavior like that isn't sort of slapped down early, you're going to start seeing it happen to not just streamers, but everybody. And that ruins the community and that ruins the game.
And Sodapoppin made some comments yesterday that got the community all abuzz, sort of in a similar vein to what you just mentioned, that we might talk about on another call on the show soon. So we'll see where we go with the way streaming the game happens once the game is actually out there. But look, everyone, I might wrap it up there if that's okay. I've got another call to get to. Unfortunately, we're jam-packed today. But thanks so much to everyone for coming on and putting your point of view forward and sort of clarifying this issue a little bit more. I hope that everyone listening that this call at least somewhat got a little bit more of that issue fleshed out, and some other viewpoints out there. Even though there seems to be a lot of marrying up on this one, it's sort of the semantics that people are somewhat disagreeing on. But I think it's something that definitely will continue to rage on as a bit of debate within the community. So we'll see where it all goes. But anyway, Emmortal, thanks so much for being on the show, mate.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
And Sabara, thanks for coming back.
No problem. Always a pleasure.
And thanks, Trabadab.
You're very welcome. I also think I heard on C2's stream that there might be another tournament for level 40s. And so that might be interesting to see what will happen there.
Oh, definitely. I don't doubt there'll be something else coming, so we'll see what happens. But yeah, that'll be a call for another episode then. Okay, thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
And that's the show for today, everyone. But be sure to tune in next week as we have even more calls for you. So please do listen in then for more Countdown. But before you go, let's have some fun and see if we can go through all the thank yous in one breath. Here we go with a thank you to the following patrons: 8 Count, Aero PC, Anti, Bear of Pain, Binger, Brandon K, Callum F, Chunky Dunk, CJ, Connor C, Damien A, David F, David J, Dufficus, Goat Rope, Halsey Spartan, Hurlbert, James S, Jamie S, John HC, Josh W, Michael H, Minoru, Patrick J, Randall H, Rasmus S. Oh God, I think I'm getting closer. I don't know. Rasmus S, Rarebit, Rick S, Ryan K, Sylvia K, Tim B, Tim S, Tom S, Twigs, and Zudamos. And of course, the very dedicated, legendary patrons of Countdown to Classic. An extra special shout out and thank you from the bottom of my heart to those who dig very deep for the show every month in Billy C, Eric S, Firespittin' Kitten, Flosy B, Freaky Fritz, Galgamir, Ida B, Batlord, Carl W, Nick B, Palfura, Sierra S, Tsunami, The Anton, Anton, Wilson Mar, Vanifak, and Velarco. Thank you so much for your phenomenal support of the show. Countdown to Classic would not be on the air today without your support. That is absolutely true. So that's it for today. Have a great rest of the week, everyone, and I will see you all next time.